there's a huge opportunity if we contribute to that, to have that 4 or 5 change in the Senate to accompany a President Biden, who may not knock a home run for you, but certainly he's not a President Trump. So this is serious what we're doing. The voting and getting people involved in that, the energy that's in this protest movement, if it is also focused on this process, it's right before us. We only have 2 months and some days. If we let that get past us and don't participate now, I think we've missed a huge opportunity. And I would encourage everyone to focus on that as well as continuing this protest.
So we're going to transition now. So we're going to ask, give it up for the panelists, folks. Guys, give it up. So we're going to ask the panelists to move to these seats on the side. We have 3 more panelists coming up to join us, actually 4. And we're going to dive into a conversation around action. Sean, come have a seat as well. Terry, you stay. And I'm going to, actually what we'll do before Leslie, we're going to do very brief introductions. And then Leslie, you'll take it from there. Here you go, Sean.
Hello, I'm Sean King. I'm a co-founder of the Grassroots Law Project. As I said earlier, I'm born and raised here in Kentucky, so glad to be back home. And also a journalist as well, and try to blend those worlds between journalism and activism.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Donovan Taylor. Can you hear me well? My name is Donovan Taylor. I am a legal professional here in the city, as well as a neighborhood leader, West Louisville connector, and just a very active individual to looking to advance our city and state. And a native as well. Thank you.
Afternoon, I'm Councilwoman Dorsey. I represent Louisville Metro District 3, which is part of West Louisville, and I also have the largest black city in Kentucky per capita, the city of Shively. I am recently newly elected. I was elected in the class that came in 2019. Right now, I am the resident millennial, and I have recruited my brother, Jacoy Arthur, who will be joining me within the ranks. So I do this full time, so pray for me as to how I pay my bills. But other than that, I am in this fight because I am seeking change that I wanted to see, and we will see where we land.
Hello, I'm Councilwoman Paula McCraney. I am also newly elected. We came in the same class, and I happen to represent District 7. If you know anything about Louisville, District 7 is 92% white. I happen to be the lucky person of the council person with the constituent by the name of Daniel Cameron. I'm also from Tulsa, Oklahoma. And if you know about Tulsa, it's the 1921 race riots. We don't call it riots, we call it 1921 race massacre. And I'm a born, raised product of civil rights movement, from my parents on up. So I'm in this fight not because of any other reason other than justice.
Grace and peace again. All right, so if you know me, you know I have a campaign called Don't Complain, Activate, right? And the idea is that you don't have to be President Barack Obama or Beyonce Knowles Carter in order to activate your community, right? You could be a journalist and activist, you could be a lawyer, you could work with the ACLU, you could run for office, right? And activate in those ways. And so this panel, we really look at it as an activation panel. So the first question that I have for the panelists is, what are some of the ways that the everyday person can activate, right? The moms, the dads, the teachers, the big sisters. Our first panelist started to get into it, but can you talk about what ways can everyday people get involved and activate?
First, we need to recognize that everybody activates differently. I'm 61 years old. Well, we'll be 61. I know I look 30. But I may not be on the battlefield marching from block to block, but I may be standing on the sideline cheering you on. I may not be out in the front of the movement because I don't have to be in front. I'm a legislator. I write policies. That's what you need me for. So everybody needs to get in where they fit in.
There you go.
And so what that means for you is different than what it might mean for everyone else. So if you can walk, walk. If you can talk, talk. If you can push, push. If you can help somebody and push a stroller or a walker, do that. But everybody has to get involved at some level. And if you don't see somebody out on the street with you, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're not marching with you or they don't stand by you. I might be at home on my knees praying for you. So everybody needs to get in where they feel the most comfortable. Get in where you fit in and do your part.
Amen. Don't complain, activate. That's what you told you. Amen.
So I think she said it all. I what I do want to revisit, I was taking some notes as people were talking as to how to engage. So the one thing that I noticed is many people feel paralyzed in the midst of fear and everything going on and not knowing where to go, where to seek to activate, how to engage. Councilwoman McCraney said it best. We are all given God-given talents. Right now in this city, I'm going to diverge from Breonna Taylor a little bit, we're looking at over 100 murders. I have people who are activating everywhere from starting NTI boot camps to working security in the pool, to making sure that the pools are free, to making sure that the babies are fed, to making sure that their evictions are going forward, providing education. So it really is about finding your space in this place and moving the entire movement forward. We all have different gifts. I will be marching. I also legislate, but I don't sleep. My gift may be not sleeping. I see Sean King post many times. He's like, I ain't slept. So I'm right there with you. I follow him on social media. That's his gift. It ain't mine. So just really understanding, getting in your lane, moving that forward, and then empowering people. That's the other thing I want to say about activation. Sometimes our issue is we get jealous of other people's gifts. If it ain't my space, instead of getting jealous of what you've been given, I need to learn to support you in that space and stay in my lane and do what I've been given to do. A lot of times we call that the crabs in the bucket mentality. That ain't my gift. I love Shauna. I done got my own social media. Shauna, I need you to post me so I can get hyped up. But what I'm saying, if it ain't mine, I'm not gonna hate. That's not what I've been given. So we need to learn to optimize in the space that we've been given and support in the places that we have it. And traditionally, to me, that's been the weakest place of activation, is a little bit of jealousy. And understanding that we need to support in the places that we may not always be strong, but learn to support each other in the places where others are.
Thank you, Councilwoman. As you were speaking, it made me think about something. And so I think that when we're talking about activation, the first thing is that we have to understand how oppressed our people have been. We have to understand how oppressed our individual families have been and how that trauma shows up. And so for me, I guess about 4 or 5 years ago, I decided I need to take a deeper dive within myself and how can I make couture hair the best couture hair. And so about 4 or 5 years ago, I intentionally started working on myself. And so I think the first part of that activation is that if you have not healed from your own personal traumas, if you have not healed from your generational traumas, there's no way in hell that we can show up every day to deal with the trauma that the system is putting upon us. And so what I challenge folks to do is that first part of activation is figure out what it is that you have to do for you as an individual in order for you to show up your best you every day. And it's not going to change overnight. But that's the first part of it is taking that deeper dive, because we all have traumas and it all shows up. But you can't allow that to show up in the work, because this shit is hard and the system and the people are fucking with us, so we can't be fucking with each other, right? And so I'm just gonna leave it at that.
Well, again, my name is Donovan Taylor. I originally from here, but I moved back from Chicago to the Chickasaw neighborhood where my grandmother stayed. And I would say one of the best things when I learned back and got activated in this city is seeing how power moves in this city is getting involved in your neighborhood association. And that is so widespread that they can find your niche and gift in that. I'm recognized in this city, and I am in this city because I'm a strong advocate for the Chickasaw neighborhood in West Louisville. Pretty much nothing goes on in West Louisville if you're not recognized in Chickasaw, and I think that's where you really could get active. I'm across the gamut. I'm everywhere, and one thing that you learn, and you take that knowledge and you share that knowledge within your block and within your neighborhood. You know, I have a concept of what I pretty much learned from Chicago is every block is a village, and you move on that and you build in block by block. And we learned that through that you learn there's a difference. And when I'm advocating for Chickasaw, I understand I'm not advocating as a monolith because it's sections of Chickasaw what I'm advocating for, that this is what this section needs. It may not even be a concern for this section of the neighborhood. And learning that we have to be very precise and strategic in our work. Much of the things that have happened has been very collaborative when I do this work. I'm not only collaborating with West Louisville neighborhoods. When I'm trying to get things done, and I try to find likeness within other neighborhoods in the association, like Beachmont, Lucky. You know, I am going around in this neighborhood, really making connections and seeing how we have shared interests and how we can make moves in this city by shared interests. One thing I would say that what the Chickasaw neighborhood led that was very beneficial for the city is the transitional housing ordinance. That was something that came very grassroots of neighbors looking at this is an issue that we have to address, and we brought it forth to the Metro Council. And when we knew that in Metro Council that you did not have to go out to our different neighborhoods because those affected. Once I say that I got both Benchmont and Lucky Choo Choo with me, it's going to make some noise and it's going to make some movement in this city. And I will say that really get involved. And I'll say one place, if you can't find any place to get involved in, you can get involved in your neighborhood association. We recently have an issue with the Portland and how they are very protective. When I came in the city, one of the things I learned is the Portland Neighborhood Association. I learned my skills from them and how they have been very protective of a West Louisville neighborhood, and I take those same skills to Chickasaw. I think there's two neighborhood associations that you really come into West Louisville that's going to be effective and going to make some noise. It's going to be Portland and Chickasaw, and I think that's one way we could really get involved, and just get involved on your block, and from that block, your neighborhood to the city, and from the city to the state. Thank you.
I heard a lot of smart stuff here, and I wanted to reflect on two things that I heard. First is the comment on taking care of yourself. I had a beautiful conversation yesterday at the barbecue where me and somebody else were just reflecting on the therapy that we had both been receiving. And you've heard us talk about the trauma that we've experienced. Not just all of us in this room have endured some measure of personal trauma. Even just what's happening here in Louisville over the past few months is traumatic. It causes harm. And I have worked now with nearly 500 families impacted by police brutality all over the country. And sometimes there are videos, like last night I probably studied a video of police brutality. I probably watched it last night about 200 times, just trying to understand every clue, every hint. And to be able to do that work, I have to be in therapy as well.
Yeah.
I have family therapy. My best friend in the world, who's not here in the room, is civil rights attorney Lee Merritt. He and I sometimes, I don't know if Miss Wanda Cooper Jones is in the room, but when we first received the video of Ahmaud Arbery being killed, Lee and I saw it before the world saw it, and we just boo-hoo cried like babies, because it was how we had imagined, but even worse, to see this man being hunted and slaughtered. And Lee and I sometimes have sleepless nights over the trauma and the harm that we have to walk families through. And so she's right. You have to. There's never a moment where you're just perfectly healthy, but you have to be on a path to health and wholeness all the time.
Amen.
So I wanted to say that, and then something else. I just want to say that you have to be a learner, and I've learned even just here over these past 10 minutes, just learning. You have to be a listener and a learner, and so when you're in a room, just take notes. You know, if you're gonna film it and rewatch it.
Yeah.
See if there's something you can catch there that you can, a strategy you can integrate. I've already heard multiple smart strategies just on the panel, and how are you going to integrate those? And then my own contribution to how we activate, I'll even go back almost a step before some of the things that have been said, which I thought were brilliant. You really do have to make a decision on what your cause is going to be. I do just want to encourage, we're here organizing around Breonna Taylor, and so we're all fighting for justice for Breonna, but this may not turn out to be your specific cause that you throw your heart and soul into. My wife, her cause is childhood literacy. Some people's cause is climate change. Some people's cause is actually working around probation. Some people's cause is very different. It may be home ownership. But here's what I know, and this is a moment where it may feel like I'm stepping on your toes. I can tell your cause, not if I pass the mic around and say, what's your cause? What's your cause? Here's how I can tell your cause, is if I go and ask your friends and family, hey, what's Angelo's cause? Now, everybody in Angelo's world knows his cause. Why? Because when you've actually decided to throw your heart and soul and life behind something, your whole world knows. Not because you made some announcement, but because you live and breathe it. You recruit people to it. You ask them to donate to it. You ask them to join the march and protest. So here's the question that I want to give back to you. If we ask the people in your world, has she chosen a cause? Has he chosen a cause? And describe to me what it is. If the people, if your Facebook friends, if your coworkers, if your family, if they can't repeat back to me what that is, then you probably haven't chosen it. And what I've learned is, it's almost like, you know, when you have a shirt or a hat, or you own a car, you then see that shirt and that hat or that car all over town. When you choose a cause, all of a sudden you begin to see opportunities, you begin to see doors open, you begin to have a radar for that cause. But a lot of times we float above a cause without throwing our heart and soul into it. And so you need to make a decision. It could be for this case. It could be for policy. It could be for elections. But you definitely have to make a decision for sure. Yeah.
Thank you, Sean. And it's fascinating because we've been having some conversations with folks who have thrown their all behind elections and saying, this is where we need to focus our attention. These elections matter, and our votes matter in these elections as well. So the question I want to pose to the panel is, how important is November, both nationally and locally? How important is this November? Is it different than previous Novembers? Is it just another November? What's at stake?
Sure. I'll say something that got me in trouble. Actually, it was a weird moment where Donald Trump Jr. retweeted something that I said, and I was thinking of Louisville when I said it. The same would apply to Minneapolis. The same would apply to, I live in Brooklyn, New York. It would apply to New York. In some of our greatest cities of pain and police brutality, we already voted. Like when we say vote, listen, follow the beginning, middle, and end of what I'm about to say, okay? I'm not discouraging anybody from voting. But often, when we don't train people to be educated voters on who to vote for and why to vote for them and what policies they represent, like my city of New York, every single member of the city council is a Democrat. Yet people are being killed and brutalized by our police every single day. Our governor is a Democrat. Our attorney general is a Democrat. Our lieutenant governor is a Democrat. People voted. We told them to vote, and they voted. And it's not working. Now, don't be simple. The solution is not to switch to the Republican Party. That's dumb. I'm saying we have to be deeply involved in primaries. We have to really get into the business of who we're voting for. I'll close with a painful illustration. For years, I was on the Tom Joyner Morning Show, and several of my co-hosts, informed co-hosts, this was about 2 years ago, they were literally, two of our co-hosts went to vote, and they called me, which is actually against the law, from the voting booth, asking me who to vote for. I don't even live in their state. These are informed people. And, you know, they went down the ballot. There were like 30 different elections they had to vote for. I could only really tell them 2 or 3 smart things. They literally just said, Sean, I'm going to try to vote for everybody black. And I said, well, how do you know? Like, how do you know who's black? And here's the thing. Sometimes somebody's black and super problematic. I'm thinking of the district attorney of Los Angeles is a black woman named Jackie Lacey. Is a nightmare for that city. Yeah, the attorney. So if you go down and vote black, that may or may not work for you. Somebody else said, well, I'm literally, that's what they told me. They said, I'm gonna try to vote for women. I get the sentiment. That may not work for you. And so every election matters, but we have to raise our IQ about who's who and what policies they impact, from city council to state legislature to school boards. And I run an organization called Real Justice, and we have now helped to elect over 20 district attorneys all over the country. We would love to recruit and help elect a new district attorney here in Louisville who can change the system from the inside out. And that type of strategy, you have to be making those moves now. Even if the race is 2 years from now, you gotta be doing that now. I'll close with this. We've helped to elect district attorneys in San Francisco, Boston, San Antonio, Jackson, Mississippi, St. Louis City and County, and others. We just helped to elect, I was just telling Tiffany about this recently, we just helped to elect the new district attorney of San Francisco. Let me show you the power. When Chesa Boudin ran, he said he was going to cut the city's jail population by 50%. And he said it would be like a goal at the end of 4 years. Privately, and I had never told him this, we've talked since, I thought it would take him 8 years to reduce the city's jail population by 50%. He did it in 7 months. He did what took San Francisco 50 years of mass incarceration to build. He broke it down in 7 months. And it's almost at 60% now in 8 months. That's the power of that position. And it's the power also of having somebody in that position that loves you, cares about your community, feels accountable to the people at this table. It's a very different position than having a stranger in there who could give a damn about you and the community at large. And so it matters, but we have to be super informed when we go in there to vote.
Well, I think this election for the state of Kentucky, the city of Louisville, and West Louisville is monumental, one of the most monumental elections that we have had as of recent date, even more monumental than President Obama. We have a moment right now to knock out 2 idiots in office, and both by Trump and Mitch McConnell, and so therefore, which really would impact our quality of life directly. So I think this election it will require us to have a greater turnout than even Obama.
Yeah, so I closed out the last panel talking about how we have to identify candidates to run, and that's the first thing. And so as far as this election right now, we had Representative Booker who had his run. I feel like that as a community we failed him. We didn't get behind him soon enough. Leaders in this community, leaders across the state, did not get behind him and push his name soon enough. So we have to know when we have someone in our back door that's been in the streets, that's been battling with us, we have to put that support behind them if other people don't. So what I will say to this is, I'm not a fan of who we have of the other option, but I do know that we have to go to the polls as practice. And what I mean by that is that we still have to go to the polls like we're trying to get Charles Booker in that seat. we still have to show up to the polls like it was Obama. Because what's going to happen in 2 years or in 4 years or in 6 years or 8 years, we're going to have that candidate, right? And so we have to practice now of what that looks like. And if we don't practice now, I don't know what to tell you.
I was taking some notes as people talk, so if I can, I'm going to address a couple things. I think Sean said black in color. Black in color, Reverend Cosby taught me, this isn't always black in consciousness. And sometimes we can elect people that are black in color, that aren't black in consciousness, but I found many of my counterparts may be black in consciousness that aren't black in color. So that leads me to the second point of really understanding what a person's characteristics and principles are. If I may use Charles Booker as a perfect example, I heard many of my peers and cohorts say, hey, Charles hasn't earned it. He ain't been there long enough. What has he done? And so often I think in the black community especially, and I'm going to call us out, we have this idiom that we need to do something in order to be prepared to get there. His calling was then. Sean talked about your calls. There was a sermon Sarah Jakes said about your passion. And she talked about the passion of the Christ. And really she said it was about, when you talk about your passion, what are you willing to sacrifice for? It wasn't a matter of what Charles had done or how he had earned it. It was the fact that he was so passionate about the state Senate, the Congressional Senate seat, that he was willing to sacrifice everything forward. And so understanding what that means in regard to candidates, who is willing to put everything on the line for what you want? This is, if you all get in Kentucky, we're just gonna be real. It ain't about how many signs you got out. Shamika's in the audience. We have seen complete union organizations get in and sponsor folks. This is about money. This is about popularity. People will put signs on your car talking about blank, blank picks. We need to understand who we are electing. What do they stand for? What are they passionate about? What are they willing to put on the line for us? Because our lives are on the line once they get in that seat. And I don't think we've understood it to that extent. I also wanted to talk about the popularity contest in voting sometimes. It's about whose name we recognize or who does sound black or who is a woman. We really need to get to understand who these candidates are. Donovan works for KFTC. I recently got behind them because I saw the education that they were doing behind candidates. We have to understand not only what these folks stand for, but there's something Janet Jackson used to say, what have you done for me lately? We need to understand what these candidates are voting for, how they have impacted us. Somebody talking about a racial impact study. One of the things that I'm putting forward in the racism as a public health crisis is to even understand at the local level, what does a council member do? We're passing ordinances all day long, and somebody talked about a racial impact study. Let me first tell you what we do. Then go back and pull the laws and understand what ordinances are being cited in court, and understand that there are really only 2 or 3 of them. So as a council member, it was sobering for me to sit back and then realize, wait a minute, I can pass ordinances all day long. We vote on a ton of things, but how many of them are actually executed in the court of law? Less than 1%. So who are we truly impacting? That's something we really got to think about. It ain't just the position, but how does that position impact? So if you look at black people and pull their records and understand what's happening, it's not city ordinances, it's state statute. So when we understand, people talk about, oh, we're going to replace council members, understand how we impact you. Councilwoman McCraney is impacting us by leading the work on the Civilian Review Board. But I'm going to tell you, y'all, those ordinances ain't what you think, because that's not what's going to court. So understand the role that you're voting for, understand the impact that they're having on the people, and then move in that way.
This will be a November to remember. And I'm going to say something that I have never said out loud before. But I'm going to say it because this is the time to say it. In November, we know what's at stake. There's a movement out there that's saying just vote the down ballot. That means they're encouraging people to skip the presidential election. I don't care if you don't like Biden. I don't care if you love Trump. But what I do know is what I've been living for the last 4 years. So if you are being encouraged to just vote the down ballot, you're missing a grand opportunity to make some change at the top. And I am getting ready to say it, and you can quote me, yes, I'm about to say it. Vote like your life depends on it at the top of the ticket. And for the Senate race, Mitch McConnell's race. If you don't know nothing else and anyone else on the ballot, you skip those. But don't skip the President of the United States, and don't skip our Senate race in Kentucky, because those two have everything to do with your life. Everything else is going to work itself out, because those people are working hard, knocking on doors. They're going to take care of themselves. But if you listen to the naysayers that say just vote the down ballot, please know that you're doing yourself a disservice. Now, I've said it. Now I got something else to say. And that is, I started off telling you that I'm in District 7. District 7 is 92% white. What that says to me, because I was the first black elected in that district since its inception, and what it says to me is I worked my butt off to get there. But when you call me and you talk to me about a policy change you want, or anything that you want to find out about how I'm doing in District 7, you've got to not take away my blackness. I was raised in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I was brought up by civil rights leaders. I got suspended many times for trying to make a cause happen. So let me just tell you, my black brothers and sisters, we have a problem. And that problem is jealousy. And that problem is crabs in the bucket. And that problem is disrespect for one another. And I'm done. I'm going to do what's best for this community, because I was elected from this community. I first listened to District 7, 92% white. Once I listen to them, then I'll make a decision, because I have a voice on the council among 25 others. What's best for this community is the way I vote. So when you call me and you say, well, you over there in District 7, you don't care about us, all those white folks. Let me just tell you something. That's disrespecting me. And when you tell me I'm a sellout, because I've heard it from the members of the council who work in the West End, my response is, go to hell. I'm a minister. Reverend Cosby is the one that licensed me. But I'm telling you, if you think you can disrespect me and you can take away any part of my black skin, go to hell. I work too hard. I know what is at stake, and I know how important this election is, and I know how important day to day what I do for you. So when you call me with some respect, because I work hard for you, and I don't play. And I think Councilwoman Dorsey will let you know I ain't the one. I ain't the one. Period.
Period. She said, I'm going to drop your mic, okay? Jada Hampton, can you come up here? Jada is the president for the Youth Council of the Louisville NAACP. Come on up here, Jada. Oh, Youth State Conference. Okay, not just Louisville, but the whole state, period. You sit right here, sis. Okay, thank you. Thank you. And I'm going to let Jada speak, but as the panel was talking, I was just thinking that it is such a great point, right, that we need black conscious people in office, right? It's not just that Chief Arredondo is a black man, right, but it's that he's a conscious black man who comes from the community and cares about the community. You know, as the old folks would say, all your skin folk ain't your kinfolk, amen? And so we have to be very conscious and very intentional and not play respectability politics, right? Be cautious of our history and how there is a black elite, and there's always been a black elite. But what I always like to tell people is, as black people in America, we all have a PhD in being black, right? We have a PhD in what racism and what justice looks like in America, right? And so we do need to uplift each other and to support each other and to remember that we are all activating in a different capacity, right? And the last thing that I really want to urge you all is, and me and Angela was just talking about this, don't just listen to what people tell you. Ask them what are they doing and look at their action. We have been hoodwinked and bamboozled for far too long, right? Unfortunately, I do believe we are at one of those moments, right? We think about the 13th Amendment that quote unquote freed black people in America, but created a caveat that said, except if you are duly convicted of a crime. And so what was really being offered to us is the South said, we want you to stay on the plantations, and the North said, we want you to go to the prisons. That's the honest truth that we don't want to talk about, because the descendants of those same people are now in mass incarceration. And now we are looking at a Trump campaign that has put out their new agenda that is saying, now you all are talking about defunding the police, now we're talking about defending the police, right? And then we have people countering it, but we need to ask them, what does that actually look like? Right? And so I just urge you all to dig into the weeds, right? And just don't go to the polls, but know what you are voting for, and also activating before then, right? And planning ahead and not waiting until November, because now is the time to activate. So I'm going to pass it over to my sister, Jada. This question is about, one, what does justice truly look like for Breonna Taylor, right? That goes beyond, we know we want the officers to be arrested, and they are going to get arrested. We need those arrests to happen. We need those convictions to happen. But as I told you all with Jamar Clark 5 years ago, those officers didn't get arrested, but we really planted seeds that allowed for George Floyd to get some justice in Minnesota, and we're still pushing that forward. So Jada, can you start us off with talking about what does justice for Breonna Taylor look like?
So thank you, Leslie. Hello, everyone. So starting off with getting justice for Breonna and what that truly looks like, that's looking like passing Breonna law not just in Louisville, but all over Kentucky. Dismantling LMPD and all other police departments in Kentucky. We must start there, because it's not just a Louisville problem, it's a Kentucky problem. We've seen, I live down in Lexington, so I see what's happening in Louisville happening in Lexington. So and if that's just happening in those two major cities, counties, then where else? So we starting there. We looking at the laws and looking at what needs to be changed, starting all the way down from Breonna's name even being on that search warrant, because that's where she was failed at. So making sure that we are holding them accountable, making sure that they're getting the right facts and that they're being credible. So definitely that. And then also making sure we keep spreading and saying her name so that there's not another Breonna Taylor out here happening. As a youth leader, this is looking bad for the generation coming up, because what do they have to look forward to? We're showing them now, so let's continue to show them. Let's continue to fight. Let's continue to do this for Breonna Taylor.
Because I'm co-chairing the Civilian Review Board work group with Ellen Hessen, who is the deputy mayor, I want to close my remarks out with this. Justice for Breonna, for me, in this capacity, looks like getting our state legislators to pass the laws so that we can have subpoena power put into the Civilian Review Board. Without that, the Civilian Review Board is null and void. There's no meat to it, although we call ourselves adding meat to it. So when I talk about getting our legislators to get behind this, we've talked to them and we've heard them say, oh, it's gonna be difficult. Oh, that's gonna be hard. Oh, we have to get those boys over in the eastern side of the county and the state to come on board. Well, do it. Do your work. Get it done, because that's what we need. That's what Breonna's law is going to need to have a little bit more oomph to it. This Civilian Review Board that will take away the opportunity for the police to police themselves. Without subpoena power, it's not going to happen. And we need everybody to talk about that while you're marching and talking and knocking on doors, because nobody's saying it. Nobody's saying it out loud. And Keturah, you're on the board with me on the work group. So is Councilwoman Dorsey and so many others. There's 33 of us working on this review board. But what you don't know is when I get behind closed doors with the mayor's office, they're trying to dismantle some of the things we're putting together. I have introduced 2 different ways for us to get around not having to have the state do a total change in policy or law for us to have the subpoena power. Until we get them to do that, I have thought of 2 different ways for us to get around that. And both ways, the county attorney's office, along with the mayor's office, have poo-pooed it. But guess what? The council has the last say. So y'all work with us, fight with us, because we need the state legislators to do their job. And until then, we're going to do what we can to get this Civilian Review Board to have a little bit more meat on it, because it's time out for police to be policing themselves. It ain't working for us.
Thank you. So the first thing I'll say is Justice for Breonna, to me, looks like reimagining public safety. And I say public safety and not defund the police, because for me, it's not about taking away from any entity. It's about building all of them up in a way that supports all of us. So when I talk about public safety, that means investing in public service and social services entities that support poverty-related issues. I don't call them crimes. Most of them are poverty-related issues because people are fighting for survival and they do what they have to do to survive. Beyond that, then we can handle the crime. So Justice for Breonna, to me, really looks like, how do we examine how we have gone about public safety? We have traditionally only talked about it in the terms of policing. But now the conversation is evolving to really understand what are the upstream things we need to do to tackle issues related to race and issues related to income. Because at the end of the day, those 2 things hinge everything else. So they're the hinges of everything else. The other pieces of this that I wanted to say is a gap analysis. So I think Lanita was talking about the young man who was pulled over. When I read through our policy in my spare time, what I realized, a lot of the issues when these officers get off, if you guys go back and read the PSU statements, it's not because they were found guilty of something that was in a policy. Most of the times what happens is there's a gap in the policy and there's no way to prove them innocent or guilty, thereby they get the benefit of the doubt. So understanding that we need a true gap analysis of our policy. So in the police review that is going on now, that is the question that I sent to the Chief of Public Safety, and that has now been included in the police review, is a gap analysis of the data. Because 1, are you enforcing the laws equitably? Does the data show it? And then how then do we create policy to fill in the gaps in those where we don't have officers making decisions based upon their implicit bias? The last piece of this is understanding, somebody mentioned the police contract, and really understanding what that really is. Does anybody realize that the police contract is really codified in state law? I don't think many people really knew that. So when people are talking about the police contract and that it's been up for 2 years, understand that the police contract has actually been codified in state law. So that lobbying work was done before we even realized what was going on. So we can change the contract all day long. It means nothing because we still got to go back and try to change state law. The Police Bill of Rights is essentially the police contract. So understand what that means when we're talking about fire the police. Understand that there is a law that is protecting them. That's not ordinance. That's not that's law. That's Kentucky state law. So we have to get educated on what the true processes really are in this regard. So part of the end of what I will say is Justice for Breonna really looks like an educational component for me. And educating our people, and that doesn't mean just black, that's humanity, on what it is that we are actually passing, the impact of the laws, and what that means for our day-to-day lives. Because this is bigger than black. To me, this is really about just being poor. So understand what that means. Justice for Breonna, to me, is a ratification of our laws and a complete education of the process.
Yeah, so I have been personally trying to answer this question since I found out about the murder of Breonna. And I don't have an answer for me personally. I don't know what that is. I don't know what that looks like. I think that there's so much work to do in general as far as what our communities need to look like, how we reimagine. I'm actually an abolitionist at heart. But the role that I'm in, I've got messaging is everything. But that's where I'm at, and my heart is, and my mentality. But when we talk about what justice for Breonna looks like, I personally cannot answer that. I don't know what that is.
Well, I guess when we speak of justice for Breonna, I guess I would agree with our Councilperson Dorsey that it is a complete reform of our lives and laws that impact our lives, aside of holding the individuals who are involved in her death accountable. I think one of the things that this particular case and issue is going to bring up to a light in this particular community that we dealt with just a few years ago when our good Judge Olu Stevens made an issue of racism in the jury.
Right.
And I think that is going to be a matter that impacts this case so much, is that even if you have a prosecutor who wants to prosecute, and you have an attorney general who wants to prosecute, are we going to get a jury in this state that's going to prosecute? And that's an issue. I'm currently working on a police brutality case now that is in appeal in state court because of jury racism. And I think that's an issue that for this particular matter, definitely with Breonna, only justice for her, but justice for everyone, particularly dealing with that particular matter and eradicating not only racism in our society, but racism in the judicial system that employs and allows for many of us to be massively incarcerated and other issues that we deal with in our judicial system. Thank you.
Y'all give it up for the panelists. I learned a lot. One of the things I always say to folks is that we're confronting an oppressive system. We're confronting oppressive systems, right? And oftentimes, some of the systems that we're actively trying to transform are oppressive. When we talk about voting and the ways elections are set up, and our access to voting and voter disenfranchisement, like we're actively trying to engage in a system that oftentimes we're trying to be locked out of or completely disenfranchised. And I then say to folks, in order to confront an oppressive system, you must build a new system, right? It is very challenging to fight a system without a system. And oftentimes what we've tried to do, and the reasons why it becomes so difficult, is because we're trying to confront a system as individuals. Sometimes we try to confront a system with organizations, but we still have yet to build the system that confronts the oppressive systems. But what I heard today, what I've seen in Louisville during our time, is that the recipe, the ingredients are here. Yes. Right? The ingredients exist to build that system. Yeah. But oftentimes, if you don't see the ingredients together, you don't think they exist. Yeah. You don't think you have them. But the ingredients are here, right? So the question is, how do we connect the dots? How do we connect the pieces to build that system? And I must say this, I was thinking about it today, and I've had the opportunity to speak to Katara many times about No More No Knocks and how it all happened. And even today, when she mentioned that we talked about our challenges amongst each other, and sometimes jealousy being one of them. But the root of the challenge, what's up under there, right? And oftentimes it's trauma, right? And we know trauma is as a result of violence, right? And we know one of the violence that we experience is police terror. But we know we experience a lot of terror as black folks in our communities, a tremendous amount of terror. And one of the things I often say to folks too is that I don't know how we do it. right? Because oftentimes the ways in which we've tried to do it have been unsuccessful, right? But we need to know things have been limited, things have fallen short. But today I am clear that we have the system to do it.
Amen.
Every block is a village. And if we recognize that, we can transform the system. And the other thing I want to say was on my mind, we've been talking about how do you manifest a thing, right? Seeing a thing before it comes to life.
Yeah.
Recognizing the openings. Breonna Taylor's murder was an opening. George Floyd's murder was an opening. These murders have been an opening. And the leadership, if I must say, of Kutera Heron locally to transform law is an opening. And the question of who's next, who's the new mayor, right? And I believe one of those possibilities is Kutera Heron.
Okay.
I'm just going to say it. I'm just going to say it. Because we've had many conversations. I've been informed so much in a short period of time. And hearing her analysis, not just about policy and legislation, but about our people and who we are and what we need to be transformed. Right? It's more than just policy, it's more than just legislation. You have to be able to know your people in a particular kind of way to get them to do that. And that's clearly what you have. So I just want to name it and name it publicly so other folks can recognize it too, and so that we can say, let's get behind that. Right? The question was presented, who's the next mayor? We know who it is. Right? We know who it is. And we need to get behind that. That's it. So I just wanted to put that out there. I wanted to speak that forward because the time is now. That's right. And we are the ones to do it. There's no way around it. But we are going to transition, family, into some workshops. If the good Reverend Green would come up, he is going to transition. Give it up for the panelists one more time. And the diligent, consistent work they're doing throughout Louisville, it is amazing. Pastor Green, the floor and the mic is yours.
All right. Thank you, Angelo. Thank you to this panel. Sheesh. I was dropping jewels in here. So we're going to take a brief 5-minute so you can stretch. Lunch is coming. Lunch is on the way. We have lunch coming for everybody here. But I know we're socially distant, but I need y'all, we're going to float a little bit, all right? Because this is the time for the revolution. They passed me the mic now, so it's over with. It's revolution time now. I'm going to allow our team to get set up, but just take a couple minutes, 5 minutes, and we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you so much. Thank you. All right. Thank you all so much. We're getting ready to study some. Go ahead. I'm sorry, talk. Awesome. Where is Amber?
I know it takes so long. Like,
Oh, there's Amber. Amber, can you join us? All right. Jeremiah is going to join us. Pastor Lamont, will you join us? All right, family. One mic check. Family. We're getting ready to have this conversation. This is a part of our strategy has always been to share knowledge and community and build power collectively. I just need, if y'all gonna talk, I just need y'all to take it upstairs. I'm one of those preachers, if you talk to God. If you gotta whisper a prayer. Amen. All right. Yeah. Amen.
I can turn you up, make it loud.
No, that's all right. Okay, wonderful. Excuse me. If y'all gonna talk, I just need y'all to take it upstairs. It's fine. There's a lot of room for all of us to talk. But we want to have a community conversation about organizing strategies. And so I want to just, our panel, if you will, is going to be more of a roundtable conversation about what organizing is in our context and what strategies we collectively can build together. So this is a teach-in training, my brother here. This is a talk back about organizing. We got a few minutes before March on Frankfurt and the collective will take us further into more details about it. But I want to just level set and frame our conversation around what organizing looks like. We organize because we believe that power and people shift power, right? We believe people have the power to shift policies. People have the power to shift systems. And so we organize to influence and to build power amongst people, right? Not because we believe people can dismantle systems and structures. We're grounded in this in the Kingian philosophy of nonviolence, right? Nonviolent resistance. It is a form of resistance that we believe is powerful and strong. We believe it so because the greatest power against hate is love. And the greatest power against violence is nonviolence. So we embrace a philosophy of nonviolence, nonviolent resistance. It's not just peaceful. We say no justice, no peace, because we really mean that. We didn't come to be peaceful. We don't disturb people to be peaceful. We do it to be nonviolent. But it is to agitate. It is to be engaged. It is to engage in nonviolent confrontation. It is to bring out a contrast, a distinction between those who believe in freedom and those who uphold systems of white supremacy and violence. So that undergirds our philosophy of social change. Tomorrow we'll do more of an in-depth training on nonviolent direct action and da-da-da-da-da-da. But before our Good Trouble Tuesday, I just want to help you all understand our philosophy and our pedagogy of what it means to organize and to build collective power. So everybody organizes in a different way. I organize particularly from a faith tradition, as a faith context, as a faith leader, as a faith organizer. I served previously as a National Youth and College Director of the NAACP, and our President Director, Tiffany Lofton, is here. She just dipped out. You saw Jada and Matthew is coming, some of our NAACP fam. I don't mind saying I come from a more traditional level of organizing. We wear jackets and things, we go to the meetings and we turn up on the side, right? So we do it all. I do both. There's some, so when I say that, I mean from every end of the spectrum, from Stokely Carmichael to Roy Wilkins, everybody does something different. But one thing we are all united in our common purpose, is that we believe in the liberation of black and brown people in this country. And not just in this country, but throughout the world. We believe in the liberation of all genders, non-gender conforming people. We believe in freedom-loving people. And so today we have a variety of conversation partners. Amber, who will introduce herself, is with BLM. Can I say that? Okay. And Young Democrats? Okay, all right, bet. We got Amber from the Young Democrats of America and BLM, who's I actually met in Memphis. She's actually a Memphisan, I guess.
I'm from the state of Memphis.
Oh, the state of Memphis. Okay. All right. She's from the state of Memphis. Y'all heard that. And so we've met before, and she's here. She's been here for a couple weeks, a month maybe, organizing. My brother Jeremiah Chapman just flew in from Oakland, California. He is an organizer. By and large, she does a bunch of different stuff. They'll all introduce themselves. Lamont flew in from New York. And so I just want to allow them a chance to talk about ways in which they organize. And I'll start with my sister from the state of Memphis. Wait, let me get the COVID-free wipe. Oh, she already, okay. We're going to be COVID-free in here today.
So the main way that I organize is through digital organizing and social media, through like social media campaigns and that way, and like getting people involved in the work like that. I mainly came into the work through a lot of like unjust killings that happen in Memphis. We have a very corrupt police department that likes to shoot people close to 20 times in the back and leave them dead. So that's kind of how I got involved. I also got involved on my college campus before I moved back to Memphis. I held like one of the first protests there in like 30 years against privatization, and then I just kind of kept with organizing when I moved back to Memphis.
Awesome. Let's give it up, man.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jeremiah Chapman. As you mentioned, here joining you from Oakland, California. I just got in this morning. Oh, yeah. So my background has been kind of across the gambit. Started off as a student activist at John C. Smith University, which is an HBCU in Charlotte, North Carolina. Really advocating at the time. They were shutting down schools within the community based off of Republican House bills that cut education by $500 million in the course of 10 years, which was crazy. Then eventually worked in the House for a black member of Congress, Representative Alma Adams. She was the 100th woman in Congress at the time. And so that really opened my mind up in terms of the legislative process, particularly on the federal level, and how local pressure and local influence can really, play a major role in what happens. So everyone how many of y'all are actually from Kentucky or from Louisville, right? Great, awesome. I'm glad that we got some hometown folks here. So I say that to say that, the work that you all are doing in the camaraderie that you are building in this moment is truly meaningful. I was also a major proponent of the Need to Impeach movement. And so what I saw was what I literally had to do was travel across the country and meet with people on a local level so that they could understand the process for impeachment at the time. We eventually actually got the guy impeached, but then of course the Senate decided to do otherwise. But it's about understanding these processes, and I don't think that I'm going to say anything completely different than what people have already said here today. But the leaders or the people that are going to be the next mayor or the next city council person or the next, the next senator is sitting in this room right now. And I think it's important for you all to create. How many of y'all are familiar with the term depth chart? No? So in like football, right, or in basketball, you have a depth chart, right? So it's like, if you have your quarterback, your number one quarterback, the main quarterback, then there's always a second quarterback, right? So there's a depth chart and starting to put people in those positions. So if you have a city council member and you have an attorney general who I know y'all can't stand, if you have all these different things, start slotting people into those different potential roles, right? So another thing that I was particularly invested in was youth organizing across the country in 2018. So the organization that I was working for targeted 38 congressional Republicans, and we flipped 33 of those 38. And so I said it to say that the youth vote and getting youth and young people involved in this process is something that I think a lot of us kind of bang our head up against the wall because we're unsure as to how to approach young people. But we do know that they're the largest voting bloc in America right now. They're larger than the boomers, right? They vote at half the rate of boomers, right? but it's incredibly important to engage them in a way that allows them to take ownership of what they're doing. So we're on a college campus right now. I'm pretty sure the students here on this campus, outside of the death of Breonna Taylor, are interested in student loans, right? Or trying to limit student loans, right? I'm pretty sure that they're going to want to buy a house and housing affordability within the city and across the country. So allowing students to really, and young people, not just students, because not every young person is a student, and we shouldn't discredit them if they aren't students, correct? Y'all agree with that? Right. And we have to meet people where they are. So my work has been about trying to bridge that gap between the college student and then the brother who's coming out of the system that needs that opportunity. And so I think it's just about allowing those rallying cries. And I think other people said it earlier, is that it's your gift, it's your passion, it's your, whatever it is. Some people may feel very motivated based off of their, say, LGBTQ identity, right? And so allowing them that space to organize within that community without any type of repercussion, any type of recourse to feel like they're stagnated in being able to do that, right? So I don't want to take up any more time. Pass it to the next person.
Give him a hand. Thank you.
I'm Lamont Anthony Wells, and I serve in the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America. So the perspective that I come from in organizing is a faith-based perspective. The ELCA, or the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, by the Pew Foundation, was reported some years ago, about maybe 4 years ago, as the whitest church in America. So out of all of the denominations, Protestant denominations, we were known as the whitest church. So people ask how I get in there and why am I there? Particularly because of the work that I want to do with organizing is to help people, which many of our pastors and our leaders in our church say, what do I do? I don't know how to help. I don't know how to support. I don't know what to say. I'm afraid to speak to my congregation. Many of our particularly white leaders not knowing how to speak to their congregation. So giving them some training with the words to say, and really encouraging them to encourage themselves to speak what God has said, and to allow themselves to be free to help other people become free. The reality, I grew up in the Kingian tradition of nonviolence. I went to Morehouse College, where I learned a lot of stuff about how to engage. In the most pivotal moment for me was realizing that I was not safe when I thought I was. In 1992, I'm a little old now. In 1992, I remember during the Rodney King uprisings, when we as college students were marching down the streets of Atlanta and minding our business, peacefully doing things, and the GBI, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, would come onto our campus and tear gas May's dorm, our dormitory. And I realized that I was not safe, that I had to be able to engage. So that kind of sparked it for me to continue in my life. So when I gained some leadership in the ELCA, and I serve as the national director for their 249 college campuses and universities, and I also serve as the president of the Black Lutheran Association, encouraging individuals that we will not be erased, which they will try to do. We will not be ignored. And the reality, as I spoke about the connection with the Kingian philosophy, is that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And many individuals still don't believe that. So although I spend a lot of time trying to convince non-Black indigenous people of color to do the right thing, it to me is worth it, because it allows me an opportunity to show them the way to do better, to do what is right, and to do what is just. Thank you.
He came and told me what I need to do with this sanitizer. So yeah, that's a great point of introduction. I wanted to just hear the diversity of voices as organizers, and which helps us as we talk about telling our own story. As organizers, one thing that's very important as we do this work is the power that comes through narratives, right? That your story connects with someone. Your story speaks and grounds someone. It helps us to engage in what we call courageous conversations. As we do this this path or this work, the intention is to build the base, right? There are enough people in the world who believe in a moral vision of society. A lot of people want to be able to just live a normal life, raise their families, right? Not be affected by the police. We all kind of want the same. We're not asking for a lot, right? We're not asking for, I do want my 40 acres and a mule, but I'm not asking for more than that, right? We're asking for things that are normal, that ground ourselves into common purposes. And so how we communicate that, how we narrativize our desires and our struggles are important. And so that's what unites us. I believe in power building and power mapping, and we talk about that. So here's our philosophy. I'll just teach about what we have done since we've been here. First is to build community, right? We know that we're not from Louisville. Did I say it right this time? Louisville. Hey, come on, look. After 3 weeks, like we here, right? I got the L's, we got our L's up. We know how to do the dance, the little shuffle in the rock. Well, we got it. So, but that's important for us to be invested in the community so that people can build trust. You can't organize people who don't trust you. That part. You can't work with people who don't trust you, right? And so in order to build trust, we had to have conversations with people, local leaders, faith leaders, community leaders. You want to build your base with people and allies like Amber, who also told us, hey, y'all coming in this town, you ain't called us. I've been here 3 weeks. I work with young people on the ground who are doing direct action. Holla at us. We had a good conversation. I was late to the meeting. I was getting beat up by my sister. But that's important to have those tough conversations because she's here now having a conversation with all of us and using her gifts to share with us strategies that are important. So building your base is important. Even if you want to run for local office, you can't run for local office just by saying nobody knows. You got to build trust in your community. They want to know who you are, right? So which is why we did not start when we first came here talking about we getting ready to do good trouble today. We came in on a Saturday. We said, hey, we're going to have community bonding and building. Yeah. We went to church on Sunday morning. Yes, we was. Didn't preach. Right? We went to go sit and listen. Tuesday, we decided to have a community meeting so we could be conversation partners because why? We wanted to build trust. Right? We want to build trust. And each Tuesday, which we call Good Trouble Tuesday, we didn't wait to the big action. We started Good Trouble Tuesday as a day of training. Because we believe that I'm not going to ask you to just go out there tomorrow and get into good trouble without understanding the philosophy that undergirds our work. Right? And people were ready. That first Tuesday, they were like, yo, we came to go to jail with you. Where y'all at? Like, where we going? And we were like, no, we're going to wait a minute. On the 25th. On the 25th, tomorrow. At 2 o'clock. Huh? I don't get that. 2 o'clock tomorrow, we're going to be engaged in some good trouble. But we wanted to build that level of commitment and show our investment into communities. And so as you organize, as you build, you want to make sure that you do that kind of work, that you consider engaging in the tough conversations. We don't always want to be tweeted about, right? But we're willing to take our hits because that's how you grow. Right? And I can tell you this, it's not easy work. Organizing is not easy. A lot of sleepless nights, I'm sure they can tell you. Because it's passionate work. You're invested in this kind of work. This is what keeps you up at night because Breonna Taylor could be our sister. She is our daughter. I'll just, as a point, it was just so much this morning, I don't know if you all were here, to hear the families just pouring out their pain and using their pain as power. And I was a student organizer at Morehouse College when, in February of 2012, when Trayvon Martin was murdered by George Zimmerman. And as a student organizer, I'm from Orlando, Florida. And so this was my neighborhood. This was my community. And so that is what inspired me a little bit more to get engaged in this way of organizing, if you will, and doing participatory democracy work and community organizing. The Dream Defenders, we formed, and people are going to laugh at this because I do like doing this kind of stuff. But we started marching 40 miles from Daytona Beach to Sanford, Florida, and arrived on Easter weekend and engaged in a nonviolent direct action and blocked the entrance to the police department. And I love long marches, it's because it's therapeutic. But also because I think that drama is what helps to amplify the message, right? Is that this is about narrative work. Right? Why are we calling it Good Trouble Tuesday? Because we wanted something to stick into the minds of people. John Lewis, right? There's a legacy of good trouble, necessary trouble. we wanted to continue to narrativize that because that is what's important to help continue to narrativize and keep the pressure and the focus on. I'm going to keep moving on. I'm ice skating and moonwalking pretty fast because I want to allow the next group to have the time that they need to engage in this courageous conversation with some of our elders today. But I also want to talk about our goals. As organizers, you have to have goals. We're not just organizing to organize for organizing's sake. We need a goal. You must have a goal. You want to start, if it is to dismantle the school to prison pipeline, your goal must be, or maybe one of the goals is to end suspensions, out of school suspensions. Data suggests that whether you in school suspended or out of school suspended is not going to change whether or not the person actually invests more if you keep children safe and in schools, right? And so for us, that means that if our goal is to dismantle the school to prison pipeline, we then have to figure out our goals and local micro goals, larger goals, right? And then we have to identify our targets. Who are the targets and powers that stand in opposition to us realizing our goals? So here we are. Our goal is what? Justice for who? Breonna Taylor. Our targets are clear. We know there's an attorney general named Daniel Cameron. That's why we showed up to his crib. There is a mayor by the name of Fisher, right? We might show up to his crib. Let's see, who else are our targets? Y'all want to help us? Targets? Gil Holland, right? This is the guy with the big developer dude. Yep, we got him on the list as well. Who is in here? Is the press in here? I know we live. It doesn't matter. Tomorrow's going down. So we got some other targets, right? We know I'm just talking. Y'all gonna get to know me. I'm just a little bit. This is how I am. So our targets are clear. We know that LMPD is a target. We know that the governor is a target, in my opinion, right? As democratic as he may be, it doesn't matter because Democrats got the same kind of white supremacy that Republicans do. But nonetheless, that was a joke. But y'all gotta catch it. I know y'all little dry food is coming. So we have our goals, we have our targets, and we have our strategy. Our strategy, one of our strategies, is we believe in nonviolent direct action, right? We also believe in petition writing. Petitions are great. We need petitions. We also believe in showing up to city council meetings, and we will do that on the 20th. Or this week, I think on Thursday, they have a city council meeting. We believe in all of that. But in order to amplify our work, in order to strike the consciousness of the nation, and really because I believe you can change people's hearts, because someone is going to make a decision, right? They're going to use the law, but someone's going to interpret the law based off of a decision. Someone's going to have to make a decision. And we believe that through public pressure, through outcry, through all the eyes coming to Louisville, Kentucky. I mean, we are literally bringing are you telling me the food is here? Is that what's happening? Food is here. I get it. Outcry. We believe in outcry. And drum, thank you. That's why he's my brother. We believe in that kind of work because that's what's going to bring the lights back on. I'll say this as a point of departure and go back to our panelists, is that I'm a black preacher, so I'm going to take a text. In Genesis, right, in the beginning, God said, in the beginning, look, my Bible, I'm all over the place. That's John 1:1. But God created the heavens and the earth. That's the text, right? And in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth was without form and void. There was darkness that hovered over the earth. And God said, let there be light. And there was light. What we believe in nonviolent direct action, it is that light that comes in the midst of darkness. It is that hope that comes in the midst of pain. It is that joy that comes in the midst of sorrow. That when we engage in nonviolent direct action, we say to the police that your handcuffs, as tight as they were, right, on our backs, on our wrists, where they put us in the back of a patrol wagon, a police van, claustrophobic. I mean, like, it was miserable. But to endure that level of suffering is to tell darkness that we're going to be the light. And it is to raise the consciousness, not just of America, but there were police officers, the corrections officers, who were like, yo, I like what y'all doing. I can't say that. I be out there though. You know what I mean? Like I'm out there with the people, but I can't say nothing. And we're like, can we get some water though? Like, can we get some food? Right? And they snuck it through the door, right? And but that's what happens when you engage in this level of direct action. Everybody doesn't agree with that. Everybody doesn't have to do that. There's gonna be a moment tomorrow where they'll be like, if you are still on this street in 30 seconds, you're going to jail. And everybody else will go back it up, right? And that's okay. I'm gonna be in the back of those. I'll be there tomorrow. But that level of commitment, that level of investment, to suggest that darkness cannot overtake us, that we are the light that we need. And so that's what our philosophy of nonviolent direct action is about. Nonviolent confrontation, this tension that arises as a point of departure to help us be able to shift the consciousness. And we know that the system here cannot handle, it couldn't handle 87 of us going to jail. We were in there all night, and we were in there singing and making all kinds of people mad. The lady who was clicking us in, she was like, they just out there just yelling and screaming and talking and clicking buttons, and she was just mad. And I was just so grateful. So when y'all remember, she was just so upset. And I was like, God bless you. We just love you so much. We going back home, but we're going to still come back and get us in more good trouble. But that level, she had to hear that. She had to feel that. And that's what we are intending to do tomorrow. But organizing strategies. What are some tips, tools, graces that you all have found to be helpful? Some resources. Hustle is a good texting resource. Digital. What are some good digital resources for folks who want to engage in digital activism?
Yeah, and also like if you're doing like a social media.
Tell us how to do a social media.
If you're gonna do like a basic social media campaign, I always say when it comes to organizing, you should have a green, a yellow, and a red action. So something you know where someone's gonna get arrested, but also somebody, grandma who's sitting at home, they can do this thing too. So organizing a social media campaign, I use Canva a lot or Adobe to make graphs or charts. I love statistics because white people get drawn in by statistics. So right now we're running a End Money Bail campaign in Memphis. Right now we're running an End Money Bail campaign in Memphis, and I did my senior thesis on the unconstitutionality of the U.S. bail system. So one of the main statistics that we push is that in 2019, over 61% of lawyers had clients that pled guilty to crimes they didn't do just so they could get out of jail. Because we know that the pretrial detention system is really the poverty detention system. People who are poor are going to stay in jail, so they will plead guilty to these crimes they know they can get out immediately for, and then probably do a diversion later on, but they couldn't lose their job, or they could not be able to pick their child up, or they would go to CPS. So the easiest way we do that is running a different stat every single day, over and over again on all platforms, and then you sharing it, and then we follow it up with article links of like recent arrests that have happened. I shared like stories about someone who talked about how he pled guilty to a crime he definitely didn't do. It wasn't even, they found out later on that it was dismissed, that it wasn't him, but he pled guilty because he had nothing else he could do. He was gonna lose his whole livelihood. So that's the easiest way to do it, is kind of drawing people in with like these alarming statistics, and then like a few articles to follow up with like real life stories, and then an action item of like, hey, so can you call this number all day today and demand that they, remove police out of schools, or End Money Bail, call the DA's office all day today until the office closes, and then keep calling and leaving voicemails.
Yeah, clap her up. I think there are several suites for doing this, right? We're talking particularly about digital organizing. So a lot of the work that I do is about creating the talking points, right? So going back to what she was saying, everyone in here, for instance, with Breonna's law, right, the no-knock warrant, right? It's important that organizations that support that particular thing circulate talking points to their membership, right? And then also, if you are an organization, learning how to write a press release. I think I just think it's a simple thing in the way that we're thinking about it, right? If you just think of just the simple word press release, but the attention that it garners in creating a database of local media that you can send out your information to. So how many of you all are part of an organization, like a representing an organization today, or part of an organization today, by show of hands? right? So how many of you are, say, signed on or have endorsed the Breonna's Law, right? Awesome. So you all are, I think a lot of you all already get it, but for the folks that either aren't a part of an organization or haven't raised their hands, I think that's an important thing, is that we create coalition. I think that's one of the main things that my brother here has kind of put forward is creating coalition. So one of the things I'm particularly working on is HR 40, which is a reparations bill. How many folks want that? 40 acres and a mule, right? Right? And so what we're doing is building coalition, and I'm also building talking points centered around that so that it can ease people into having that conversation, whether they're having it with press, whether they're having it with someone in their community that lives right next to them, right? And then also creating kind of the infographics that she was kind of alluding to with, a statistic that may draw someone in that's, that highlights a particular disparity, because there's the education portion of what we're doing, right? So a lot of times people, they may have a lot of energy, particularly say, we'll just keep using, what we're here for, right? With everything with Breonna Taylor, right? People may have a lot of energy behind something, but not necessarily know the best way to precisely talk about it, because we have to be specific in what we're asking for, because we know that the powers that be are going to try to lose us in the legalese, right? In the legal language, correct? And so one of the things that I noticed when I was organizing, before I moved to Oakland, I lived in Charlotte, North Carolina, and one of the things that I noticed was that there was I know some people here mentioned the Civilian Review Board, and what I found out was that the police chief himself could not fire an officer unless they had the CRB or the Civilian Review Board approve whoever that firing was. So it's important that we're very precise in where the power lies, right? So at first glance, me as an angry activist in Charlotte, North Carolina, when they killed Keith Lamont Scott and they killed Jonathan Farrell, we're aiming particularly at the police chief, when in reality his hands were bound. I mean, he didn't do us any favors, but his hands were bound by the police union. I think we already discussed the fraternal order, the police, and the power that they have. But then there's also a board, and I don't know if it's the same in this city, but I'm just kind of giving my context and my background, what I experienced, that there was a board that actually influenced the police chief that was appointed by the mayor, right? And so some cities, it may be appointee from, or appointees from the mayor's office, or it may be appointees from the city manager, right? So there are different kind of like avenues or channels for power, and it's important that we train ourselves on those things. And then I can't help but, how many of y'all saw Selma, right? The movie, right? One of the things as a young activist for me watching that movie is how well and how, in this attribute to my brother here, setting the stage for what we want to accomplish. And we talked about who those targets are in our community, right? Whether it be the AG, whether it be the mayor, right? And one of the things that happened back then was, MLK did such a great job with setting the stage in winning that moral argument and shining that light. And so I think being precise and having adequate, not just simply actions, but the trainings, for me, I was once a training director, so trainings for me are just like, you can't have a truly meaningful action if people aren't going to have the training to continue after that. Do y'all agree with that? Yeah. Right? And so I know you all see it all the time. It's a movement, not a moment. But if we really, really want to be true to that, we have to continue to educate ourselves, but also offer opportunities for people to consume this stuff in a way that is digestible, that's relatable, right? And that also offers kind of deputizing or a pathway upward, right? Upward mobility is a major issue in the Black community, right? So one of the main things that I guess I'll say that I'd love for everyone to model here today. How many of y'all sit next to someone you already know, or don't? We'll go with who you already know. You sit next to someone you already know. All right, if you sit next to someone you don't already know, well, introduce yourself, say hello, do that loop right now. Awesome, awesome, awesome. I'm glad y'all are having this moment. And this is what it's, not to cut y'all short, I'm going to shut up now, but this is what it's about, is establishing that community, establishing that rapport with one another, get to understand what people's gifts are and talents are. I myself, I'm an artist, but I also, as I mentioned before, I'm a writer, I'm a political ghostwriter, right? So a lot of the work that I've done has been, writing policy platforms for candidates, or writing press briefs, or writing up events like this one, right? Like, not that I wrote this event, this is my brother's. But it's important that we use our gifts and we bring our gifts in our fullness to the work that we're doing, and not try to stray away from that, and be okay with being uncomfortable, and be okay with being tired, but be even more okay with doing the work, the self-work within ourselves, to take care of ourselves, to continue doing this work, because this is taxing. So I'm going to, once again, shut up now and pass it to my brother over here.
I'd like to say two things that I see as a possibility for us to really focus on engage. For me and what I focus on mainly, a lot of times we start with the what, right? Like the what, we're here because Breonna Taylor, was murdered. And the reality for me is they don't care about that. We care about Breonna Taylor. The system that which killed her does not care about it. Simon Sinek one day did a TED Talk and talked about starting with the why, right? As a business model about why something is engaged. So for me, the strategy, not just digital and engaging in all of those ways are definitely right, but it's about the research and the strategy behind it for me. So like, why was Breonna Taylor murdered, right? For me, it's about looking at, and I'm dealing with your mayor, and I'm looking at his ties and to real estate development and things like that, right? So, and I live in Harlem, New York, so I deal with a lot of gentrification issues, right? So for me, the why, as I'm seeing it so far, is not that they just wanted drugs out of the community or whatever they thought was there, right? The why is they want this community out of here so that they can build something that they want to invest in that produces more money. Would you say follow the money, show me the money, or whatever? And as much as we're marching and we're going to be here and we're protesting, and it's a tragedy that Breonna is no longer with us, right? But the marching on, like how her life keeps moving forward, is if we deal with the why, right? The strategy behind, so while we're out there tomorrow and maybe we'll show up to the lawns and maybe we'll get arrested, somebody somewhere at the Marriott Hotel having a cocktail, making a business deal, right? That at the planning commission that determines what's happening on that very street that she was murdered, right? And that's the why that I like to see us strategize and organize to be about and to be behind and to find out what that is. Because that lasts long before, or long after rather, her burial, after we've celebrated her birthday, after and I'm old enough now that I've been through several of these, and I see some elders here that have been way much more through this stuff. Like I thought that after Mike Brown and Trayvon Martin, that things would change and shift. No, it's the same thing. And as I talked about engaging, trying to train people, trying to educate people, it's about, for me, realizing that there is nothing new under the sun. I think ecclesiastical, I'm a preacher too, an ecclesiastical writer, there is nothing new under the sun, right? So as much as we might write a book, as much as Mark Lamont Hill might write a book, Audre Lorde wrote books. James Baldwin said this stuff many, many years ago. Jesus said this stuff years ago, right? And the reality is, if we don't deal with the why they're doing this, right? It is about anti-blackness, yes, because they don't care. We're casualties or whatever. But the reality is that there is a financial investment that we have to pay attention to that is determining the why this keeps happening to us or happening to our community. So that's what I like to focus on, the research. So following behind that and paying attention to where that is. So I at the last panel, we had the leaders in city council or wherever they served, and like get on those boards, right? That's why it is important to be at the table, right? And get a folding chair, if not, and pull it up to the table. The other thing that I think is so important, because I do love and care about us, is the ministry of presence, right? Just showing up for people, right, is very important. I didn't need the mic, and this is my brother here. I just wanted to be present here, to be a ministry of presence, to show support, and to show love, because that's where real energy is. So my thing here, I'm here tomorrow, I'm praying, I might get arrested, but I'm here praying in Jesus, Buddha, Confucius, Hare Krishna, in somebody's name, to see us made well and made whole. That's what I care about.
Hey, I want to respond to standing up. So a part of the work that BLM and BLM Louisville has been doing is about the gentrification. So they have been putting out research that talks about how Breonna being murdered was a plot of gentrification, and also targeting those neighborhoods that are heavily gentrified, like Nulu, and the Nulu demands they had. So they demanded that different businesses in Nulu hire more black people and treat black people better. And a lot of those businesses have responded, and the ones who haven't, they will have consequences. So making sure that you're using that research and staying up on it and following up. And they've been going to the news saying, oh yeah, I'm going to answer these demands, I'm going to do this. Because when you put pressure on people, they're going to do something. Yes. And I would encourage y'all to go to the Louisville BLM page and kind of follow up on that research too, so you can stay engaged with that.
Give them all a hand. Give them all a hand. If you're parked on the Kentucky side, is this street called Kentucky side? I don't know. Say that again. Is that right? Okay. At 3 o'clock, they're going to start ticketing your cars, so you might want to make that transition if you are. Just want to mention that. Let me give directions around food, and then we'll wrap up. There are limited veggie options if you are a vegetarian or vegan, perhaps. Maybe just vegetarian. There are some options for you. There are ham sandwiches and turkey sandwiches. I think I said sandwiches, but there are sandwiches out here. I'm really from Florida. And there are waters in the cooler, and more water plus drinks are on the way. So it's just for those who are here for this training as of now. I want to conclude by saying thank you and allow you all to ask any questions. Somebody may have a burning question or something around organizing, something that may have been said, a question you may need to field as you think through your organizing. Yes, sir.
Well, why are we not calling for an independent prosecutor as opposed to allowing Cameron, who has taken politically, allow him to move forward with the case? In a lot of cases, well, if you remember the Watergate, everybody has a special prosecutor. Sure. Why can't the governor appoint a special prosecutor in this case?
That's a good question. We can definitely.
I'll answer.
Thank you.
So that's actually one of the demands that Louisville had.
Exactly.
That, and also to establish a community board to handle the case. So we have asked for that. I mean,
right. But isn't it up to the governor to make that appointment?
Yes, but I think your governor, although he may be a Democrat in face, is a part of the institution that this is representing.
Politicians do what you make them do.
Absolutely. We're going to add that to the demands, and when we go back to Frankfurt with the March on Frankfurt crew, we plan to talk about that and add some pressure. So you're right, we can demand anything.
You know, we got state reps. I haven't heard the state reps say anything about a special prosecutor.
I hear you. That's a demand that we should continue to amplify and lift up. Received. Any other questions? Comments? Y'all feel like y'all ready to organize now? A little bit more? They said been ready, been woke. As Pastor was saying also, justice for Breonna Taylor, yes, the first demand is for the cops to be arrested. Secondly, we're joining the city in asking for the mayor to be removed from office or to resign. We're standing with local leaders in that regard. Thirdly is to pass Breonna's law in Kentucky and, of course, nationwide. Sean King earlier mentioned about reimagining public safety. And our friends in Minneapolis, they actually have an ordinance to abolish the police and to implement a new system of public safety in Minneapolis, Minnesota. These are some of the ordinances, some of the policy issues that we are engaging in conversations with here with council persons and state representatives, because outside of qualified immunity, we need to end qualified immunity, we need to end no-knock warrants, but we need to end the violence of policing in this nation. Policing traces itself back to slave patrols, right? That this nation has never atoned or repented for its original sin of slavery. And so when we were in LMPD or Jefferson County Corrections, I saw that what we were really fighting against is a culture of white supremacy that continues to evade the entire fabric of the government. And the police are the gatekeepers of continuing to institutionalize the power of white supremacy. So to demolish, or to abolish policing is to abolish the institution of white supremacy that pervades this nation. So we must amplify that as a culture. What do you do instead? We talked about earlier what public safety looks like. Quality schools, quality education, guaranteed housing. I believe in guaranteed full employment. I also believe in reparative justice and reparations. I believe that we also have a 21st Century Homestead Act. These are my national policies, ideas. I also believe that we should have, I'm coming to you, brother, I'm not going to let you, okay. National policy agenda, housing for all, Medicare for all, guaranteed annual income, a federal jobs guarantee. We saw them cut checks with COVID, with CARES Act. America does not have a bank account. We print our own money. We don't have a bank that we got to go to, and we back ourselves. The Federal Reserve backs itself. So as long as they control inflation, which we have seen them do, right? That's the job of the Federal Reserve Bank. That literally, they can create money with a click of a button. We can absolve student loan debt, right? Thanks to this happening right now, I don't got to pay my student loans right now. I'm forever grateful for that. But yeah, we can do that perpetually, not just in a pandemic. You can give $1,200 a month to everybody dead or alive. I want my second check. Amen, somebody. And then I want all my checks. Run me my 40acres.com. But that's also part of our philosophy. So when we talk about organizing, it's Breonna Taylor and beyond. It is Breonna Taylor and also beloved community. It's also imagining a new world order. Because this world has to pass. This pandemic is also about purifying the earth of white supremacist violence. And I think that is important, is that we organize that tomorrow we're not just going to jail because we want y'all to arrest 4 cops. We're going to jail because we want to dismantle the system that allows 4 cops to walk away when they murder a black body. My brother, you have a question, and then I'm going to conclude for lunch. Yes, sir.
My name's Amir Brandy. I'm from St. Louis, an activist with the Ferguson community. We've been activists since that day, August 9th, 2014. And we've been continuously, we go around the country and we document these situations that seem to continue to occur no matter how much we fight. What I don't want is us to make the same mistakes that some of us have made. We look back on our activist work and we see ways that we could have better got results as a result of doing things different. The people that we often see excluded in this collective of organizing are the people who are most affected by this method of policing. It's what we identify, what they identify as the ex-felon. He suffers more from these policies than anybody, but the politicians won't sit down with him, clergy won't sit down with him. He's not represented by anybody. And what he has to bring to the table is what's missing in addressing the issues. Without experiencing what policing has been like, you don't know what to ask for when you go to the table. So you need to think about bringing him to the table to address the real issue. Otherwise, he will not stand with you because you don't represent him. His voice is still going unheard. His issues with the system are going unheard. Nobody speaks on his behalf. So I just, yes sir, and her, yes sir, his or her. But I think that we need to not be, he does not need to be absent from the table when we create these tables.
He or she.
They don't.
She and he. And those who don't even have a conforming, they and they. They and them. Amen. Thank you so much for that. I'm going to, as a more of transition, to say a quick grace, if that's okay, for our lunch, and then we're going to transition because there's a pivotal conversation we're about to have with some of our elders. We know we don't have all the answers, and so we want to listen to them today to inspire us, and we hope that you continue to stay put. We're going to be out of here by 4:30 or 5 collectively, but this is the work. You know, tomorrow is going to be fun, but this is the real work that we're here to do. For this food, eternal spirit, we are grateful. For the presence that you've allowed us to be in amongst each other and build community, we are thankful. For this food that will be used for the nourishment of our bodies, and for this fellowship that will be used for the nourishment of our souls, let it give us strength so that we be renewed for the fight and for the journey ahead. In the many names in which we pray, we say amen and ashe. Amen. And so lunch is served. We're going to get we're going to eat, we're going to get, and then we're going to sit back and then eat. Okay? Thank you so much. You got live music to play? You know, music, background music. All right.
You tell your mama I need a shirt?
I did. I sure did. I got the contact information. Yes, I appreciate you. No problem.
I don't know, but can you get me some?
Direct action trainer. Okay, good trouble. You gotta come tomorrow. Can you come tomorrow?
Honestly, I got no more information because I'm really big on making sure that I know everything that I need to know before I go into the space. And also, I just security is big. So I gotta make sure that I'm safe before I bring
I'm just playing. I'm African American. Why does somebody else just say that? It's a rockin' dude just ask you the same thing. It's an affect. I don't know, man. I get asked that all the time.
All right, thank you so much. I hope y'all are dining sufficiently. We're gonna have one mic. Thank you so much. We are preparing to stream in our intergenerational panel. Excuse me. I just need everybody to just enjoy their food. If you're talking, you can. I mean, if you're eating, you can't be talking. Amen. COVID is out there. So we are preparing to transition to our next segment of this organizing boot camp, Freedom Academy, and we are excited as always to work with local partners and people who are on the ground doing work that we are here to stand in solidarity with. And one of those organizations is a group of young leaders who organized a march on Frankfurt on the 25th of June that Until Freedom joined, and a lot of partners. We all were there in Frankfurt, Kentucky, and this young group of organizers led us to Frankfurt, Kentucky. And so we're grateful for their work, the March on Frankfurt. Let's make it up. Let's make some noise for the March on Frankfurt crew. All right, and so they're going to introduce themselves as a group, a collective, and then we'll transition into the panel.
Hello, my name is Megan Shaver. I am the founder and CEO of Louisville Scoop, and then I also work at WAVE. So what I've been doing in the community here lately has been giving away laptops to students for resources, food. We're giving away shoes this week. So we've really just been trying to give resources back to the community as much as we can.
I am Brea Silver. I'm a Louisville native. I am former Miss Kentucky USA. I am also an entrepreneur here in Louisville. My style or lane of organizing really lies heavily in purpose, passion, and community. Actually, next week I will be hosting a brunch for women to start the conversation about whether we see justice for Breonna Taylor or not. How do we continue to keep the momentum and moving the needle both in Louisville and beyond, and how we can take care of ourselves as women along the way.
Hey everybody, I am Vashti Proctor. I am the program manager at the Academy of Music Production Education Development, also known as AMPS. Also am an organizer with the Louisville Hip Hop and Arts Festival, which is a hip hop collective comprised of artists, visual and also vocal artists. And I'm just here for the people, and I'm here to make change.
Hello everyone, my name is Imani Bland. I am a sourcing professional at the utility company here. I work in corporate purchasing, Louisville raised, and just here as part of the collective.
Good evening, I'm Lamar Collins, President and CEO of Roots 101 African American Museum, the only African American museum located on Museum Road here in Louisville, Kentucky. Always honored to be around young leaders and young warriors. I can't wait to address you guys about your responsibility and accountability to the march and the struggle that we have today. And I love what I've been hearing up to this point. Can't wait. All right.
Hey, I'm Douglas Craddock. I'm a professor at U of L, also chief of staff at the College of Ed. Pleasure to be here. This panel here, I will begin to kind of show the linkage between the elders. So those that have done this work in the past, provide the opportunity for us now. and allowed us to be here at this particular time. So you'll see a generational linkage that occurs, and make sure that we're honoring those that came before us in a way that they're still here. So they're honoring me and their legacy, they're walking legends, they're walking billboard of information, ideas, resources, and building on that for the betterment of everybody in this room today. So that's how we're going to function on today. We're getting our Zoom set up to get them together. We'll introduce the elders that will be on the panel, and then from there we'll be able to connect over the next hour or so.
Brother Ray still in.
All right, Eric, can you hear me? Yeah, I can. So I'm gonna give you the floor. We have an audience. You can't see them, but we can see you all. We're gonna provide you the opportunity to introduce everyone, and then from there, begin to get started.
Doug, since Mr. Collins is there, how about I let you introduce him quickly, and then I will introduce Mr. Ed White, who's on Zoom with me.
Perfect. So Mr. Collins just introduced himself, so we go towards Mr. Edward White now.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Of course, I can't see everybody there, but thank you for having me and having me moderate this discussion, which I think is so important at this juncture where we're at. Mr. Ed White. He will pop up in a second, I guess, when he starts speaking. But he is the former director of the River City Drum Corps in Louisville, Kentucky. And I guess special for me, he was the director there when I was a student in the group from about maybe the 5th grade until I graduated high school in 2009. And for the folks there in the room who don't know about the River City Drum Corps, it's a local arts organization that marries students' interest in music also with pushing them to excel in education and in life beyond everything that they currently know. So I was a student in the group. I grew up learning so much of what Eric Burst and me is today is because of the drum corps. So I'm very happy to have Mr. Ed White join me today. Mr. White.
Hello, Eric. And how are you today?
Thank you very much.
what they do, and then it's swept under the rug, I forgot, because this is a whole societal event. And basically in my time and in my youth, it was just one segment, just one segment, and now the greatest thing that I see about this is that it's encompassing everyone. It's touching everyone, and everyone is in your face. And so therefore it can't go away, and that is the greatest thing about this thing is now maybe, and I'm just gonna say maybe change will come, because now everyone is getting to see what we have experienced all my life. So this is not new to me. We're talking about Breonna Taylor getting killed, which was, yes, but I remember a man by the name of James Taylor. The police were called to his residence for a domestic incident. They handcuffed Mr. Taylor. He had one of them small utility knives while he was handcuffed, and the police shot him 11 times. So there was a street march. They did march on the police station. They did knock out the windows, but after that, guess what? Everything quieted down. Reverend Lewis Coleman was called a rebel rouser, and all of those people out there were rebel rousers. So here we are now, back again at the same spot. So that's my initial take. I'm gonna give it to Lamont, and if I get some more time, I'll tell you about some things, the community I live in. Because my grandmother bought a house in 1922 when the state of Kentucky had covenants on the purchase of property, and how she was able to buy that property is an amazing story. So I'm gonna let it go to Mr. Collins, and come back to me.
Okay, Mr. Collins, your impressions generally, February to today, what are your impressions?
Well, those impressions, the same impressions I had as a young boy growing up in Louisville, Kentucky. I heard one of the ministers say, there's nothing new under the sun, King Solomon. And there is nothing new under the sun. And I'd like to share some actual history of Kentucky. This picture right here. Why Kentucky is so important to the civil rights movement. Did you know A.D. King, Martin Luther King's brother, lived right here in Louisville, Kentucky? And because A.D. King lived right here in Louisville, Kentucky, he was only a phone call away from any protest in Kentucky. So when you look at historical pictures like this, you see A.D. King, you see Oasis Williams, who was the grandfather of Portia Williams, who marched with you. Did you know that? Her own father was part of the movement here in Kentucky. So when you just look at the history of Louisville, Kentucky, and the connections, you had to be here. Because God does everything intentionally. So I can tell you every ride that I can remember as a child. I can remember desegregated busing. All those things formed who I am today. Right? And that's important of starting the museum that I started, because kids have to see an image more than what the media shows us. But my saddest thing today was waking up to the newspaper talking about the divisions among us all. Right? And that saddened me, because we should know, it's not being present, it's being presence. Being in the presence of the march. Believing in what you're marching for. Connecting with each other individually and collectively. That's what made marches work. That's why until freedom came, we don't have to worry about outsiders. Outsiders have been part of this community all our life. Okay? So it's not about outsiders. It's about individuals that want to own the movement. You can't own the movement. You become part of the movement. Right? And you guys are here being part of the movement. And I'm just here to keep the story told 365 days a year. That's my purpose. I'm not trying to be a leader. I've done that, got a t-shirt. I'm becoming a better ancestor, leaving a better tomorrow.
And Mr. White and Mr. Collins, before this panel started, we solicited questions from people in the community that they wanted to ask both of you. One of those questions is, what lessons from your past activism and past movement work have you learned that need to be shared with the young people that are now organizing today? And Mr. White, we'll start with you. Lessons from your last or past movement work that you think young people organizing today need to hear.
Well, what young people need to hear is, first of all, they need, as Mr. Collins says, you got to start with the history, because the history is what sanitizes all the lies. Because history can't be changed. So you got to go backwards to move forward. So you got to go back and study what had been done before you came, what had been done by who before you came, and what are you willing to do that those people did to push you forward? Because the stuff that you go back to, that is your foundation. And remember, nothing can last unless it's built on a strong foundation. Now, if you out there just protesting and out there just because that's the thing to do and all your friends are there doing it, you have to answer why. Why am I here? What am I asking to be changed? Because if you can't answer those questions, and then after all of the shouting, the TV cameras go away, you're going to be left right where you were without any knowledge of what happened before you and what propelled you to want to get in to make the change. Because see, for a lot of people, I grew up in a part of Louisville called Portland, which is a white Irish, 99% white Irish community. My grandmother came here as a black school teacher and taught at the community, at the neighborhood black school. So, there were certain areas that we knew that we couldn't go, can't go, why you over there, don't go by there. So that's the history of that I understand of Portland. So I can talk, when people start talking about Portland, I know the history. So as we have these movements now, you got to know the history. As he mentioned, you got to know about A.D. King, who was Martin Luther King's brother, who had a church at Zion Baptist Church at 21st and at 22nd and Muhammad Ali, and that he came here. You got to know about the Wade family, where a white family bought him a house in Shively, and they burnt it down. So you have to understand that when you look at West Louisville, that now is 99% white. When I was a kid, 99% black. When I was a kid, it was 99% white. So what happened? How did all of this happen? So you've got to be empowering yourself with the power of history, so that when you get out there and with your shirts on and marching and doing what you do, why am I doing it? Why? You got to understand the why, and then if you empowered by the why, then you are empowered, you got power. Why are you marching, son? Why are you marching? Why are you, the gentleman that I see on the TV, why are you here? Tell me why you're here. And what is it that you want changed? And unless you can tell me that, then I don't want to talk to you. I don't, because you don't know what you're doing and why you're doing it. I created the River City Drum Corps so that I can instill information and knowledge to children like Eric, and now I have Eric's. I have Eric's to do my battle. So I thank you for your time.
Yeah, Mr. Collins, please.
Read the question to me again.
When you were our age, in your activist work or your movement work, that you think that we need to know today, perhaps, that you think we need to know because of what you're reading in the news, or any stuff that you think about?
Okay. What I know is that we have to play chess and not checkers. What I know is that when I watch this movement today, when you guys strategize and move like the boardroom, you're effective. When you move like Facebook, you're ineffective. You catch what I'm saying?
Yep.
When you go behind that boardroom and collectively come up with your strategies, there's nothing they can do.
Yep.
But when you come with that popular demand in your face, can't be effective. Because if you remember, the successful people work in the boardroom. That's what we need to be, in the boardroom mentality, behind closed doors, in agreement of what our movement will be. Because if you're in movement, can't nobody move you. Am I right? And we got to move better than that. I'm getting a little deeper. We're so busy teaching young men how to tie ties instead of teaching them how to make ties. When I say make ties with each other. Make relationships with each other. Build business together with each other. You see what I'm saying? We have to go deeper. And that's your responsibility to each other, to you guys, is to be willing to go deeper. Not superficial, but deeper. And if you go deeper, there's nothing that can stop you now. Because you guys got things we never had. You got more education than we had. You have more opportunities than we never had. But what you can't be is divided in your agenda that you want to have. That's what I see.
Mr. Collins, and I should let everybody know that Ms. Elmer Lucille Allen, because of our timing today, wasn't able to join us. She would be happy to talk to anybody, of course, but I think we were running a little bit late with this panel. And I know she would have a lot to say. One thing that she did tell me, when I called her on last week asking her about this panel, I asked her, would you be comfortable sitting on a panel with Chester Grundy or Ed White? She said, oh yeah, if you remember her voice, she said, oh yeah, I grew up next door to Chester Grundy. And I think Miss Lucille also pledged AKA at the University of Kentucky with my grandmother, who's no longer living. So there's, like I said, there's people who have been here for a long time. And Mr. White, my other question for you is, my mom told me about, she remembers being younger and the Kentucky National Guard being on the corner, on every corner in Louisville, during the protests that I guess ensued after the Rodney King riots, possibly. Can you tell me a little bit about what was that climate like? Because, for me, that was my first time seeing the National Guard deployed to Louisville for such a protest or anything like that. So give us some context.
Well, you got to remember when the National Guard comes out, that means one thing in my mind, is that the powers to be are scared. They're fearful. And so therefore the only way that they can take back what they call their ownership is to bring in that type of atmosphere. But really and truly, what the National Guard was really brought about, from my opinion, it was the white people on Dixie Highway, the ones who were acting fools. They were the ones that were doing the protesting. They were the ones that was, just like the Little Rock Nine. They were the ones that were knocking out the buses when the buses pulled up the Valley High School. So it was really, in my opinion, it was to keep, because they thought that we, as black people, were going to get into that. They were trying to protect what privileges that they thought they had, but what's the funny thing about it was, and this is how this thing flares up. There's a caste system within white people. Okay? All right, now the white people at Ballard High School and the other high schools in East End, they weren't acting like that. Okay? But it was the white people that lived in Valley Station that was the working poor that the white people at Ballard don't want to deal with. So therefore, the black people in Valley Station and the poor in Dixie Highway felt that their lives would no longer be changed, because remember, it's always I can be poor and white, but I'm just not black. I'm still white. I don't care how poor I am, I'm still white. So I still have some privileges. So now you all have already done, you know, took everything away from me but my whiteness. And now you're going to force me to be able to have to deal with black people in my community. So, you know, that's what that was about, you know. Now, in that particular time, Mary, I didn't pay attention to the National Guard. The only time I paid attention to the National Guard was in 1968 when the riots, what we call so-called riots, happened on 28th Street. You know, now that's the time that I was fearful, you know, because for me, you know, my grandfather and grandparents were black Republicans. Okay? Now, and see, when you laugh, see, here's what a lot of people don't understand. Right. That type of Republican is not the Republican that you see now. Mm-hmm. The people of the Republican Party that you see now were the Dixiecrats. And LBJ disbanded the Dixiecrats. So when LBJ did what he did for civil rights, then the Dixiecrats abandoned their agenda, and then they all became Republicans. Okay? So, you know, that's the difference that we really have to look at. Again, you know, my thing is we got to look at the history of this thing. We got to look at this history, and unless we're looking at the history, because that book that you have, sanitize it. It tells you that there were black people doing stuff, and we wasn't all skinning and grinning and you know, spooning and not working. So before you picked that book up, you said, what? Who are these people? Mm-hmm. Who are these people? You know, and so as Mr. Collins is doing what he's doing, now he is starting to shed light on who these people are. Now, think about this. Miss Lucille, could you imagine what she went through? She graduated from Nazareth, which is now Spalding. Miss Lucille graduated from college in 1953. I was 1 when she graduated from college. So can you imagine Miss Lucille, a college graduate at an all-girls school run by the Catholic Church in Kentucky in 1953? No, I cannot. Can you imagine her stories? And then can you imagine her taking what she did and become the senior chemist at Brown-Forman, one of the most powerful liquor distributors in the world. They sell liquor in 163 countries in the world. So can you imagine what she went through to rise up through that company and to be not only black, but a black female? You know, they didn't even allow them to wear dresses.
Yeah. Let me bring in Mr. Collins because I want to know his thoughts, and I also want to ask him another question. I want to thank Reese Hamilton and the crowd for sending me some more questions. One question she got is Mr. Collins. She's wanting to know if when you were, you know, organizing when you were younger back in the day, were you thinking about us, you know, this current generation of young people that are organizing now? That's our question. And please, you know, feel free to touch on what Mr. Ed White said as well.
Let me start with the question before that, because I want to go a little deeper. Because when you do a history, you always got to go a little deeper, right? We talked about politics. Talk about going from checkers to chess. If you just deal with local politics as African Americans, if you were just talking about city government, you can't ever control what happens, because what happens on a federal level or state level, right? So whatever the city of Louisville decides, what you guys touched on a few minutes ago, it has to get government approval from the state. What we have to do, and what young people have to do, is start thinking on a national level, political level, statewide, so we can really have effects in the inner city. right? And then we got to think of the federal, the Senate and the House, where the Kamala Harris's and all that, where legislation is truly passed to make a difference in our lifetime, right? So from the point historical, we have to move from urban government to start trying to take on state government, because state government has the rules in every state. And you think about how racist states' laws are. As black people, we should never support state laws, because historically, state laws have always been the things that take us backwards, right? And federal laws have always been the things that take us forward, right? So from a historical standpoint, we need to think on a national level if we're ever going to change anything on a local level. So when brothers are woke and get on TV and talk about don't vote, you tell that brother go sit on his, because we have to vote. We have to vote in national elections to make a difference on local elections and issues. Does it make sense? All right, now the other question was, I'm old. I'm not as old as him, though. He said I wasn't even born when this dude's old, because I wasn't even born when he said, I was in 59. So I just want y'all to know I'm not that old. Okay, but what's the next question?
59.
What was the other question, Eric? I almost want to talk to you.
Oh, it's okay. Let me throw out another question for both of you, and Mr. Collins can start this time. My godmother, who's also, an activist, who I respect a lot, and when I called her back in, I think it was like maybe late May, early June, when I wanted to start forming a group of people to start organizing that I knew, she told me, and the quote was, "What were you waiting for?" Or something to that effect, or like, I was waiting to see when you were gonna get involved in, everything going on. So one question somebody submitted to us is that the stuff that we see in these history books seems so larger than life. And the question was, are we doing enough? Are the young people today in Louisville and the natives that are everywhere scattered throughout the country and the world, are we doing enough to bring attention to Breonna Taylor, or are we bringing attention to Mayor Fisher, who continues to lie? The whole system, are we doing enough, Mr. Collins?
What is enough? That's the greatest question. You never know what's enough to it's enough. So from what I see, you guys are doing more, and as you do more and more, then it becomes enough. But it's not enough today because nothing's changed. It won't be enough till it's enough. So it's an open-ended question that you have to continue to fight every day. Enough is enough when it's enough.
All right, Mr. White, what do you think? Are the young people today doing enough? Do you expect more?
Oh, Lord, Eric. Well, Eric, here's what I'm going to say. I'm glad that y'all finally got into the fight. Because I see young people too into themselves. I see them too into their fancy things. I see them into the good life. I see them being too comfortable about going places that I wasn't allowed to go. I see them too comfortable about, they go and in their restaurants, their fancy clothes, their fancy cars, and not really giving back to the generation that was before them, because I see y'all's generation as a generation that has become entitled. Okay? I get this because I'm supposed to get it, without having any work for it. If you want a job, I don't do this, I don't do that. And for me, as you was coming up, I always made y'all do what y'all consider to be menial labor. In this group right now, you get your college degrees and you go off and all right. Now you look at a lot of the state of your historically black colleges. Y'all are the richest alumni that has ever been produced by those historically black colleges. But do y'all come back and give back to the community? So what do y'all give back? I see y'all as a take thing, and now I am so happy that that Breonna Taylor has woken y'all up to say, if we're gonna make a change, then I gotta come out of my boardrooms. I gotta come out of my comfort zone. And just like your mother asked you, well, Eric, when are you gonna do something? What are you gonna do? And you know, I mean, you're a young man that I know that graduated, left Louisville, went to USC, and then from USC, then you went to USC, then you went to Columbia, and then you left Columbia, you came back to Columbia, and you got a job at the Courier Journal, and now you a budding lawyer in New York City. But what have you done to come back to help the children at River City Drum Corps that gave you your foundation? So what are y'all giving back? When are y'all coming back? So now Breonna has got you coming back. Now here's where I disagree with Mr. Collins. Politics is local. Politics is local. You know, the local is the foundation. And from your foundation, then you go to the state. From the state, you go to the federal. But if your local politics is weak, then your state politics is going to be weak. And so therefore, we've got to build up, we got to grab Mayor Fisher locally. You know, because look, what Fisher has done is, Fisher has passed it off to the state. Okay? And so now the state has passed it off to the federal. But it should have been settled here in the city of Louisville before it went to the state. That's what should happen. And so therefore, that's where I disagree with him on that. Now, as far as your young people, again, y'all got a lot of work to do. Y'all gotta, you know, come out of your BMWs. You gotta come out of your designer this and your designer that. You gotta get down in the dirt and come back, because nothing is taught until something is learned. And the only way they're going to be able to learn it, Eric, just like I am so happy that you are who you are, you know, because what I taught you, now you're putting it to use. So therefore, you as a positive young man is going to have to do the same thing as now teach it to the generation behind you, because the future for black people is behind us, not in front of us. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. White. And Mr. Collins, I want to give you a chance to respond. And also, this is going to be our last moments to talk, because we're going to transition to the next panel. So I want to thank you both first. But Mr. Collins, please address that last question. And also, for both of you, a chance to speak before we end. What is your charge? I know, Mr. White, you kind of gave us some information there, but Mr. Collins, too, what is your charge to this group of young people? If you could communicate that, please.
Okay, let me answer two before we get to that one. I never said, it's kind of crazy stuff. What I said, if we play chess, that's how we deal with politics. Never said that local politics wasn't important. What I said was chess was important in the game. Isn't that what I said? Okay, all right. That's what I said. Okay, the second thing I would like to say is that I love young people. Okay, and when I say I love young people, I don't have to chastise you to teach you. Okay, and why? Well, here's what I'm saying here. The biggest detriment to young people is old people. Okay, because I'm gonna tell you, don't trust him, and don't trust him, because Willie told me. You understand? I'm not going to make the foundation and the relationship to know who you are. I'm going to tell you who they are. And in turn, you don't help that other person. Right? That's our generation. Your generation, you guys have learned to talk to each other, support each other, walk with each other. And that's something you have to continue to do. Don't take our skeletons with you. Because you know how we'll talk about somebody else. Right? And change your direction and change in this community because somebody told you not to. Right? That's my generation. Don't be this generation. Don't stop dreams. Don't stop accomplishments in this community because somebody told you something. They've always divided us as black people. Black people have divided black people. can't fall for that trap. You are the generation. And I will never chastise you. I will always love you and teach you in everything I do.
Thank you very much, Mr. Collins. All right, Mr. White, your last words, please. Your charge to our group here.
My charge is to this group. It is, as Mr. Collins mentioned earlier, y'all are the most educated generation that we've ever had in masses. In masses. So that education that y'all have and the expertise that y'all have, y'all's job is to bring that back to the community. Bring it back to the community. You got to come back, Eric, and spend some time with some children in River City Drum Corps so that they can see that, yes, I met a young black lawyer. You hear me? I met a young man who went to the University of Southern California from Louisville. And from the University of Southern California in Louisville, he went to the Columbia University in New York. So he went from the West Coast to the East Coast. And now he's a journalist. Not only, I met a young man who sat on the Michael Jackson trial, who sat there, who had that experience, who was at the top of his game. Because you remember, I took y'all everywhere. I took y'all places that a lot of times y'all said, why is this little crazy ass man taking me over here? You know, I took y'all places where people said that we were not supposed to what? Be there. But I made sure that y'all was always there. I made sure that y'all were in the company of governors. I made sure that y'all was in the company of mayors. Made sure that y'all was in the company of CEOs where all the decisions got made at. So y'all got to come back and do that. Y'all can't come back and be dressed in your fancy clothes, you know, and your designer this and your designer that. You know, you got every designer on. You can't spend your time on Facebook because Facebook is garbage, you know. So therefore, you got to come back and get down in the trenches, because what happens so much for our leadership that out here with the megaphones, how many times did you see them where we were? How many times did you see them in the trenches? That's not my leader. You hear me? How many times did you ever see them come and talk to you and help you and touch your hand or even have a meal with you? Y'all got to be able to do that. That's why you're able to do what you... What was the motto? Always think what? Think big.
Big.
Think big.
Yeah.
Think big. Think big, act big, and be big. But when you're acting big, thinking big, and doing big, don't forget where you came from. Because there's Ray Ray back here. Nobody wants to talk to Ray Ray. You know, nobody wants to talk to Shaniqua. So all Shaniqua and Ray Ray see is all of the negativity in the community. They need to see you to come back and say, no, man, we ain't doing that. We ain't doing that. As much as big bankroll he got, I got one of them too. So y'all have to be the forces of the light that shine into the evil forces that are holding us hostage. And until y'all do that and be willing to come back, you know, example, look at Tennessee State's alumni, look at Kentucky State's alumni. You know, Tennessee State's alumni comes back, and that's why Jalen Level, my nephew and your River City Drum Soul alumnus, is running now for the president of student government for Tennessee State University. Why? Because that's what we taught him to do. We taught him to be big, to think big. And so therefore, if you don't hear anything from me, and you don't take anything away from this, is you have to come back and show the children that they can make it. And that's not what's happening, because all you got to do is look. I don't want to mention no names. You know, you look at our illustrious state senator. You know what I'm talking about. Been there for how many years? How many times you seen him in the hood? Just go down the list. Go down the list and see how many of them have you seen in the hood? How many have you seen them come back to be with our children? So don't you be like that. And all the rest of y'all in the panel, wherever y'all from, y'all got to go back to the hood. Y'all got to go back to the hood, because now y'all done injected yourself as leadership. So the children now got to come back and say, oh man, I want to be like her. I want to be like him. I want to be that. I can be that. So now, because remember, the army that's going to fight your battle like you fighting mine, I can sit back here, boy, and watch y'all get tear gas. You know, on news, you know. I walk up and pick up the newspaper, and there's my nephew on camera in the front yard. I said, boy, look at that boy. Look at that boy.
Well, Mr.
Mike, because you know I can go on. I'm done.
Thank you. Mr. Collins, thank you as well. I appreciate it. I wrote down some notes here. I gotta go do some review. So I appreciate it. All right. So I'm gonna toss it back to Dr. Douglas Craddock, Chief of Staff at the University of College and Education, to moderate the next panel. Thanks so much.
All right, thank you, Eric. Appreciate it. So we have one more concluding comment from Mr. Collins.
Again, thank you for the opportunity, but let me say this one thing that means more to me than anything. My museum means more to this community than you ever know. This is an opportunity for young people to look in the mirror and understand their descendants of kings and queens that were enslaved in America. I say that's a game changer. That's your responsibility as young people to keep our narratives being told, because we know how they tell our story. I challenge you to make sure we can tell our story so your kids have a story to tell and a story to control. That's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
So thank you again to our elders, Mr. Collins, everybody that was here. We're going to transition to our next panel for about 30 minutes or so, and really look at things from the lens of the younger generation as they describe some of the work that's been completed thus far, but also the opportunity to hear the voices of individuals from various fields, backgrounds, demographics that kind of talk about the idea of creative organizing and how we got to the place we are today. So myself and Ms. Imani will be already moderating this panel. You've already heard the introductions from the three lovely ladies here, and we'll begin with our first question to be respectful of everyone's time.
Okay, so we already talked about this group organized the March on Frankfurt back in June. So just to start off with that, what was your breaking point? What made you decide that this march needed to happen, and how did we all come back together to make that happen?
For me, it started when COVID happened for this city, so way before we even knew about Breonna Taylor. But when Breonna Taylor happened, I just knew I had to do something. I couldn't sleep at night, so I started an initiative to really help build resources back to the Louisville community. And then Eric and Brant and others came back in town. They're like, we just have to do something more to get our voices heard. So not only did I raise money for the community, but I also wanted to get out in the streets, because that's something that I probably wouldn't have done if Eric didn't come approach me.
Yeah, I agree. I think so. I'm born and raised in Louisville, Kentucky, but I'm currently based in Los Angeles. And so I was quarantined by myself for months, and I came home Memorial Day to visit my family. But the protests started happening here, and all the noise being made in my hometown about Breonna Taylor. Soon after, David McAtee was murdered, and I just found it, imperative that I, along with, my cohort, that we did exactly what Megan said, something. And so it's been really amazing we all come from different professional backgrounds, but for us to work collectively to, make those, that are in Frankfurt uncomfortable by showing up at their offices was really powerful. But again, the biggest thing for me was that this is happening. My hometown is at the epicenter of this conversation. And so again, I would be remiss as a leader in my community to not do anything or help amplify the voices here in Louisville and the action that's already taken, or that was already taking place.
Okay, so my real breaking point really was the murder of Trayvon Martin. That just really did not sit right well with me at all. So since then, just kind of being able to be in the community and give back to the community. But when I first heard about Breonna Taylor and I saw the way that they dehumanized Kenny on the news in an orange jumpsuit. That was really just, as a suspect, as both not only Kenny as a suspect, but Breonna as a suspect, that really just showed me the way in which the system, the way they treat black bodies. And I refuse to sit back and not do anything about it. So just like I said in the beginning in my introduction, I'm here for the people. I'm here to get back to the people, and I refuse to sit silent.
Thank y'all. So another question. We all came together organically thinking about the idea of the march. So in your participation with the march, kind of what was the purpose? What was the message that you were attempting to send as an individual by marching on Frankfurt?
Daniel Cameron, I ain't playing with you. We are not playing with you. We're sitting here months later, weeks later, miles and miles of protests, time and time that has been spent organizing, money that has been spent of self-funding this movement, these demands. Like, we are not playing with you. We're not giving up. And it's time for you to make a move. Also to Andy Brashear, we've seen the way in which you have responded back to white protesters protesting against the mandate to stay in your house or to wear a mask, and the way in which they hung him from a tree, literally put a noose around his face, and the way in which he said, you know what, I'm not gonna back up, but hasn't once done anything for Breonna Taylor. So are black women worth fighting for? So that's why we ain't letting up.
I too agree. I think that for me, the whole purpose was, again, making those in power uncomfortable. And I think with Louisville, you know, this is a small, big city, as I think a lot of us natives like to say. But I think the expectation was that this was going to be swept under the rug. And, you know, we saw that on the police report. But this was our way of taking a stance and saying, we won't be quiet. You will hear us, you will see us, and you will feel us. Yeah.
I would agree with both of them, but for me, it's all about applying pressure. And working in media and then having my own media company, I really wanted to make sure that we had a voice and that our voice was going to be heard in the community. So not only just protesting, but outside of protesting, how are we building resources? So I work with like a lot of entrepreneurs around the city, and I just want to make sure that their black business is going to be heard for people. For a woman perspective, it scared me because I am a black woman. That could have been me. That could have been any of us. So that really wanted me to apply pressure from that standpoint.
Can you all please speak to the importance of collaborating while organizing, and what are some of the difficulties you all faced or that were faced, and how did you all get past those?
So for me, collaboration is huge because it's a movement, right? You can do more numbers. You need the opinions of other people. You need to hear other voices. So for me, that's powerful. We can do more with more numbers. From a social media standpoint, we were able to all collaborate. We all have a huge following, so we were able to collaborate and just make sure that we're pushing our agenda out there for others to see.
What was your other question go to? Any difficulties that you faced while organizing this march and how you moved past them?
So for me, with this movement, Louisville right now, it's kind of unique, right? So you see the separation that this movement has caused. So it's hard to get to the next person or to ask that next person what they're doing to collaborate. So that's the hardest thing, is trying to get everyone in the circle or to meet together and actually push the movement forward.
The importance of collaborating while organizing.
So actually, you are looking at a physical representation of collaboration in this movement, where Until Freedom has opened up the floor to us as Louisville natives to speak to you all and others about our experience and what we've been doing and will continue to do in this movement. So I think collaboration is so important because it taps into this idea of community. And I think with unity is how we move forward in love, and where we really start to see that change. I think that we also desperately want to see. Challenges are inevitable, especially when you're dealing with people who have their own. I think each of us are passionate about something different in this movement. But at the end of the day, we're able to set aside our differences, even if we disagree on ideas or, you know, what specific, you know, lane, I guess, we should be taking up space in next steps, but we're able to sit down and brainstorm on those things together and then come up with ideas like the panel that we're on right now and the one that you all just witnessed before with the elders. So they're inevitable. I just think it's important that you leave space for error and you leave space for everyone to, you know, be themselves and express their own opinions. But at the end of the day, that the work is being done and that we all have the same goal, which is right now justice for Breonna Taylor and long-lasting change here in Louisville.
So when it comes to organizing and bringing people together, to me it feels very, 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 very organic, and it's kind of that energy that you need to kind of keep going. So, I mean, I think about the folks here at this table. I also think about Tay and Chad and Tala that are out here in the crowd. I feel like I got a whole new family throughout this whole experience and really being able to come together and collab and work together and learn new knowledge. We're able to challenge one another, critique one another, but we're critiquing one another in order to grow, right? Because within this movement, there always needs to be room for critique. There always needs, that's the way in which we evolve, so we have to welcome that with open arms. But definitely just being able to collectively come together and know why you're coming together too. That's a really big thing too. And that the work don't stop, you know, it doesn't stop, you know, just for one thing or two things, like it keeps going. So definitely like being able to rely on the people that you're organizing with to be able to not only hold you accountable, but definitely be the back that you need when you get tired, or definitely that fuel that you need to keep you going.
So as we look in the crowd and the idea of a collaboration perspective, y'all been listening for a minute. Is anybody out there that wants to speak through the lens of their perspective of collaboration and what it looks like in building up a network of collaborators around organizing and things of that nature? My man, yeah. This man keeps it 100, 24/7 by 7. Speak to him.
I appreciate it. The main thing about collaboration, and specifically collaboration in the movement, I think it's just being humble. The hardest thing about organizing for me, and I know some elders have told me the same thing, the hardest thing about organizing is organizers and playing a political game and dealing with all the egos that come along with it, which we've been seeing since it started. And at times to the detriment of ourselves and putting other people in harm's way. So my big thing, you know, in the past couple of weeks, in the past couple of months, is just humility. Having the humility to be corrected, and coming into spaces humble enough, knowing what you do know, but when you don't know it, stepping back and letting somebody else lead in that moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm out of breath, but don't mind that. So as you begin to think about the past and the history, as the elders were talking about, you have your James Baldwin, you have your Malcolm X, you have your Martin Luther King, and all these people, different people have different affinities to them. But when you put them in a room together, they are so much more powerful. And a lot of times we got the same people in the same rooms with the same group think. And it's very important to collectively find other people that may not have opportunities or access to where you come from. And then also I wanted to speak on something else, thinking about epidemiology is the study of diseases and things like that. This pandemic of Black social injustice is a pandemic. And the way you tackle a pandemic is the who, what, when, where, why, and how. And we got to make sure we know the who, the what, the when, the where, the why, and the how, and not just Breonna Taylor and what happened, but the depths of it. And it is important to know the financial issues that come with it. It is important to know the laws that come with it, the no-knock warrant. So when you begin to think about this pandemic, you need to think about it as a disease that's constantly infesting our social economic system for Black and brown people.
No, that's my queen and that's my baby.
Hey, good afternoon. I want to say thank
thank you for Until Freedom. In the last 48 hours, I can say that I have been most admired by them coming in here. And I'm one of the older members. I don't think nobody's in here older than me but Eddie and James, okay? And I come from the Kentucky Alliance. We're one of the oldest civil rights organizations in this city, in this state, okay? And Gracie left. I don't know if you all seen the elderly lady here. That was a fighter with Lewis Coleman. I learned from her, Maddie Jones, Lewis Coleman. And when they talk about that Wade family, my son is the great nephew who Ann Braden bought that house for, okay? So I've been embedded in this history. Lived 22 years in Atlanta, worked with Congressman Lewis on campaigns. And I'm gonna tell you all something. When you learn, like they say, to collaborate with one another, we need to, as Louisvillians, open our arms to these people that come from higher grounds that have fought harder fights. Not saying we don't have them, but you all need to welcome them. Like you said, the attitudes, be more humble. We got to embrace this. We can't fight this by ourselves. This is a national issue. But the only way we're gonna get something done, like you said, is put these minds together. Work on one accord. Then we take it upstairs. Then they can't turn us away. It takes a jungle. But all the fighting and the bickering, I've been down there at nights. You might not know who I am. I'm on a bicycle sometimes. I've watched the photographers, the journalists come in with wigs on, everything. They're down there. But we don't have an agenda like we should have. And as the Kentucky Alliance, I take full responsibility. We were down there to help oversee this. And it was getting out of hand. We are a haven to these kids down there that are getting out of hand. Little guy came up to me with a 12-pack, Bud Light. This is not why we're down there. Once you get an agenda down, you're gonna trickle out all that other. And that's what we're gonna have to work on so we can get all that other interference out of the way and we can get our message understood. We need to support Ms. McCraney, who was down here earlier, our council people. They're working hard, but again, it's another table. Now with the agenda, Brianna as it is, Brea, you don't even know who I am. I've known you since you were born. Dana say your mom was with the Kentucky Alliance with us, who was in this audience. You all didn't know her mother was out here. Keep doing the work. And your daddy is my brother, Barry.
Anybody else? Yes, sir.
I just want to say, the first thing is learning that every component works together. What I've seen over the time, seeing people come in with marching, protesting, we're doing all that, but the young people want to keep out the old people want to keep out the young people. But you got to know that every component, when you're dealing with a movement, it's got to be as powerful as that locomotive. And every component in that locomotive works together to make it as strong as it is. You put anything in front of it, it's going to go through it. So we got to learn that, hey, we need every piece of the puzzle that is for this agenda. And like you said, it's about planning. How do we get people of our age and beyond in the same room together? We got to go back to what they did back in the day when they used to meet up in them, in the rooms. Social media, what that does is it alerts them what we're doing. They don't need to know. We need to surprise them. We need to shock them so they won't be ready for what we got coming. You see what I'm saying? We need to sneak out like they used to do back in the day. Let's go meet up in the barn. Let's go do something to make sure that, hey, this is kept a secret until that morning when we march where we need to go. Because now everything is televised. You get what I'm saying? So when we surprise them on something and get them people in that same room and we got the minds going and coming together, I promise you, things will be a lot different because it won't be disorganization. Once we get organized, I'm telling you, things stop. Time will stop. Then they'll finally get, hey, these people are really serious if they ain't already got it. But that's what I want to say.
I'm sorry, y'all. I'm sorry, I got one more thing.
So I think about it, because I'm a nurse, I think about it as the human body, and I think about when a person is extremely sick in critical care, you got about 5, 6, 7 different physicians that are in there with different specialties. And they all have to collaborate to make sure you are healthy. So in these situations, a lot of people bring a lot of different perspectives, and we aren't so keen to letting them in. But everybody has room, and everybody has a different thought process, but the agenda is the same. And we keep forgetting that we all have the same pain and the same fears. And we have the same social injustices. It just looks different. So I just encourage people to open up their minds and be deliberate about allowing people to bring what they bring to the social injustice movement. Don't expect them to bring what you bring, and don't try to force them to bring what you bring. If it's social media, let them bring social media. If it's writing, let them write. If it's protesting, let them protest. Everybody's not here to be groupthink. And as Black people, we gotta do better as being a collective and understanding that everybody is different. And we need those differences to heal the one body. And that we're all hurting the same way, and we all wanna heal. And there's only one way to do that, and that's to be collective.
In this movement, we know that the enemy studies us. He studies our differences. Anything that he can use to divide us, he'll use that based on education, gender, economical status, whatever he can use to separate us from being united. We've seen that. I remember the days of Ferguson when we first went out on those streets. Those people responded. Grassroots people, just like Louisville. Grassroots people kicked it off. And they stayed there. And they were united until the separation came as people became stars, identified as leaders. They tricked us with that. Initially, we were all leaders. And we all stood up for the purpose of bringing about change. But in our ignorance, some of us became arrogant because we were identified as the leaders. It began the destruction of what started out natural, genuine, and had the potential to change. We separated from the elders because the youth thought that this thing, this rogue policing had just started. It didn't just start. I'm 55, and it's all I've ever seen from police. The youth think that it just started with them. Some of them have no experience with law enforcement and how they engage with people in our community. They don't know that there's a difference in the value of life. As seen by those who are calling the shots and making the rules. We see it all the time. We cover crime in St. Louis, and coincidentally, we got our St. Louis City Circuit Attorney, who we put in office, re-elected. Our platform was strong enough to go against 5 mainstream medias and get her elected, even with the president and the governor and the attorney general and the U.S. senator attacking her. She did her job. She's been doing her job. Kim Gardner is her name, if you don't know. We got her reelected by a margin that's never been seen before, because the people got out and did what was necessary to represent those who represent us in office. We have to make sure that when we elect people and we put them in those seats, that they're accountable. We have to make sure that when they stand up for us, that we stand behind them. We have to make sure that when time comes to re-elect them, that economically we make sure that they are financed so that they don't have to go to corporate America and make the deals behind closed doors that negatively impact us. Corporate America don't care about us. Corporate America becomes the constituent to those who get elected if we are not careful. So we have to make sure that they are first accountable and that we are financially supporting them so that they can maintain that space. And we have to send them help. In most states, we are outnumbered on a state level. So we have to send them help. We need people in these rural towns and counties and districts to go to the state and assist in voting policies that will keep us from having to be in the streets. We have to do this. There's a number of things. We have to start on a local level, making sure that we have elected officials in office that will address policies that impact our movement. And with that being said, I appreciate y'all. And in every city that we have people that are different, I'll say that, than the masses. You are different because you have the courage to stand up and say what you feel is unjust. So you're not like the masses, but we have to teach the masses how to be like us and stand up so that when we go out in the streets, we should have to walk sideways to get down the street. Not a handful of people, but everybody, because this impacts everybody. And like I said, I appreciate y'all. And
Thank you.
Appreciate it. I got one more. Yes, sir.
I just want to say hello. I'm Eddie Davis. I'm a member of the Kentucky Alliance. And regarding the new generation, two people you need to study: Ann Braden, Louis Coleman. You can Google both of them up, and you can Google her up in the New York Times. She is the woman who was responsible for changing the open housing law in the state of Kentucky. In Shively, she did go to jail. Her husband went to jail, and the case went to the Supreme Court. I would suggest that if you want to be a true activist, you need to study the elders like Louis Coleman, Ann, and Carl Brady. In terms of what's next for me, I worked with Louis Coleman when he first introduced incorporating the city of West Louisville. We figured out black people live in the area, we have enough votes, we have enough tax base to own and operate our own city. How did that start? It started because we have so much police abuse. Me, Reverend Coleman, Sterling Neal, Shelby Lanier, we got together at the Braden Center because we had so much police abuse. We said, why can't we do like Shively or St. Matthews and have our own police department? The city of Audubon, which is the size of Shawnee Park, has its own city council, has a mayor, and has its own police department. What's wrong with black leadership in this town? That's my question. I'm for the removal of the mayor. I caught a lot of flack about that early on. I was for the removal of the chief of police. Caught a lot of flack about that. May have gotten fired from a job. Doesn't bother me at all. I don't care. Hey, we got to move the agenda forward. If you look at what has been put in place so far, follow up, use different techniques. We finally got the city of Louisville on the ropes. They're going to have to deal with their racism. I mean, Louisville has a history of racism. If you look at the police department, look at their history. Look at Conrad. I caught a lot of hell about Conrad because I said Conrad should have been gone 5 years ago, and Greg held on to him. Why? Because that's his buddy. Well, his buddy's gone and he should have left with the chief. We don't need either one of them. If we had gotten rid of Conrad, who had been voted, had 2 votes of non-confidence by the FOP and by Metro Council. Both said they didn't want him as chief of police. Why did Greg hang on to him? Greg is the What is he? The head Democrat? He's the leading Democrat in Jefferson County. The black vote put Greg Fisher in power. Greg Fisher owes us. Why is Greg Fisher the enemy of black people, and why is he selling us out with gentrification and selling out the West End and being the water boy for the Brown-Forman Corporation? You tell me why, and you tell me why black leaders allow that shit to happen.
Because they get paid too.
Hey, then we need to get some new leadership.
That's right.
So with that, I would say, young people, in this day and age, you got more, and you got access to more information than any other generation in the history of the planet. There are no excuses. You can't say, I don't know. Can't use that excuse anymore. You got access to all the universe on a cell phone. Figure it out.
Thank you, sir. Such a great level of expertise, ideas, and creativity in the room. So we're going to end, be conscious of everybody's time. One final question you want to ask them? So one thing for each of you all to answer in about 30 seconds is, like, what call to action do you believe should be put forward, for what objective should be to make sure that this is just not for now, but there's a sustainability piece behind it all?
So for me, I kind of spoke on this earlier, it's bigger than Breonna Taylor for me. So I'm from here, from Louisville, grew up out east, but the resources in the West End for me, my family's from there, is scarce, right? There's nothing that we really have to build down there. So my thing is building the West End up with resources so kids can have laptops and digital capabilities, so when they go to school every single day, they can sit next to a white person and still have the same education. So for me, that's how we build our community. We build it with our kids. We build it with the resources that we're lacking, from a grocery store to just different things, businesses, to everything that they're doing in Lulu. We need to be doing it in our own community. So for me, that's my biggest push right now. It's just the education piece and the resources.
For me, it's two things. One is purpose, and really spending time to think about what calling is over your life and how you can tap into your gifts, your truths, your talents to add value to your community, specifically the Black community. And I think when you do that, when you're aligned in your purpose, you are doing the work to make sure that, again, we see the change, and that we're spreading that love in our magnificent magic in every crevice of this city, and even when we go beyond it. I would also say there's a lot of talk about protecting Black women and pressuring Black men to understand that, how important it is for us to be protected. But I also think it's important for us to protect each other. And I think as women, and I will speak as a Black woman, we've been almost engineered to pit ourselves against each other. And so I think with Tamika Mallory and Until Freedom, I've seen so many people attacking her, and which is so counterproductive to what we say this whole entire movement is about. And I too have had my own experiences with that. But again, that's a distraction. And I think that's what someone mentioned, the enemy, that's exactly what he wants, because it gets us, again, we're not focused on the task at hand, and that is uplifting each other, and so that's my thing. Purpose, find out what it is and how you can apply that in ways that will uplift your community, and as Black women protecting each other.
All right, a call to action. We have to work right now in real time. We are so used to being very reactionary, and it's not our fault, let's be completely honest. I mean, we're going up against a very powerful system that is 400 plus years ahead of us, so we've always kind of been, just trying to keep up. And so being reactionary is dope, don't get me wrong, but we also have to work in real time. So as we know that Breonna Taylor, she lost her life and it was connected to a gentrification plan. And as we're speaking right now, and as we're sitting here in this room, there are Louisville residents in the same neighborhood that in which they connected to Breonna Taylor to that's getting evicted from their home in the middle of a pandemic. I'm talking about these are Black mothers, these are Black children, these are Black fathers, these are Black youth that are literally about to be homeless. It's about to become a very, very big pandemic, essentially. And this is not just happening here in Louisville, this is happening all around the United States. So it's time for us to really act and react right now and work in real time and really lay down the real work so that we're not just calling out after the injustice is done, but we're working right now to prevent the injustice from continuing to happen. Oh, and also, one last thing. We always say, you know, we gotta listen to the youth, but no, let's listen to them right now. Like, they're the ones that's really gonna power this movement and take it to where it needs to be.
So that wraps up our panel. I'm gonna hand it to Stephen Greer. We have one more comment. One more. Sister, come on. Yeah.
Hey everybody, how y'all doing? Salah. I wanted to respond to Brad, and I agree that society has put Black women against each other, and it's very problematic. It is in jobs, it's in relationships, it's with family, it's in any space, any dynamic that we have, right? I do believe, however, as it pertains to Tamika, that there's a way to call people in without making it public. I like to call it like a family meeting. And also, as it pertains to that specifically, what's important for me is connection before investment. In order for people to connect with me, they have to invest in me first. In order for people to invest in me, they have to connect with me first, right? So I think when you build those connections first, and then we can start following people, but you have to build that relationship first. And I think that there's a way to address that without making it public, without putting Black women against each other, but I do think that it's something that needs to be addressed and needs to be addressed immediately. I don't want us to be complacent in the ways in which people come into our spaces and tell us what to do and how to do it in the ways that they do it better. However, it doesn't have to be a public conversation, but it does need to be something that needs to be addressed, because we still have to keep in mind that Black women have been socialized to believe, to be against one another. So we just have to handle it in a more strategic way.
Constructive criticism.
Right, constructive criticism, and also private criticism too, because there's a way for me to hold someone accountable, but if I'm trying to have a conversation with someone, I probably need to pull them away from social media, pull them away from the whole entire public, and have that conversation one-on-one and come to an agreement, and then we can address people as a whole if it needs to, because sometimes we don't even have to address everyone as a whole. We can have an understanding in the fact that, okay, maybe I'm moving in a way that is not beneficial for the people who I'm trying to work with or help, and then I'm going to do better, right? And there's nothing public that needs to happen as a result of that. It just means do better.
Thank you all so much. Let's give the Marshall Frankfurt Collective another hand for taking us to this next place. I want to thank you all for pushing through with us and making today an impactful day. I believe that we have gathered for a very particular moment in time in history, and history will record the work that happened in the basement of a historically Black college and university here in Louisville, Kentucky. And as we transcend this moment and depart from this place to journey forward tonight at 7 o'clock, we will be at the waterfront for a Praise in the Park spiritual revival experience to fuel our spirits for our journey tomorrow to the march towards the LMPD Training Academy. If you could help us by assisting Simmons College, brother, if you want us to take the chairs up, what do you got it? Oh, wow, praise God, y'all are phenomenal. At least we'll take the trash up. Well, we'll do that, right? Okay, thank you so much. Let us depart. Thank you all so much. We'll see you all at 7 o'clock. It is our duty to fight for our freedom. It is our duty to win. Okay, somebody got to do it better than me. Nothing to lose but our chance. Let a woman do it. Yeah, exactly. Tyler, my sister's going to take us here. Yeah. Asada, tell them what it is.
This is the Asada Shakur cream. I'm not going to explain to you all who she is. Just look it up. It is our duty to fight for our freedom.
It is our duty to fight for our freedom.
It is our duty to win.
It is our duty to win.
We must love and support each other.
We must love and support each other.
We have nothing to lose but our chains.
We have nothing to lose but our chains.
It is our duty to fight for our freedom.
It is our duty to fight for our freedom.
It is our duty to win.
It is our duty to win.
We must love and support each other.
We must love and support each other.
We have nothing to lose but our chains.
We have nothing to lose but our chains.
It is our duty to fight for our freedom.
It is our duty to fight for our freedom.
It is our duty to win.
It is our duty to win.
We must love and support each other.
We must love and support each other.
We have nothing to lose but our chains.
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 Ashe.
See you all at 7. Thank you all.
Sister, what is that box that you're recording to? You're live. Okay. I gotta get some feedback on whether or not he actually have a good experience with that. We were entertained and buying one.
I talked to him today.
Is that right?
I asked him all the details because I know that's what you're looking for. He even talking about his little generator right here that keeps the power going, the whole thing. He been like this long. He ain't got the plug up the number right here.
Yeah, I see he's portable.
Yeah. And I asked him, I mean, he got that.
You ready to go back to your bank?
Brother, thank you so much.
I love all the history and knowledge you have.
Well, I appreciate it.
Hey, wait, what's your name again?
Lamont Collins.
You said Iman?
Lamont.
Oh, Lamont, okay. Because I met you Saturday. I was at the Books and Breakfast.
Right.
But I was like, okay.
I remember the eyes, that's all I remember.
Yeah. Well, that's good.
Come check us out again.
Yeah, I'll definitely do that.
We will try to do more with you guys. I really like it.
Oh, yeah. Well, I work at and I know, like, around Black History Month time, they were thinking about partnering with you guys, like our Black History Month stuff. So I don't think you were open to that.
You weren't open enough, but we're open. We're open enough to do that.
we got exhibits on just every floor.
Yeah.
If we could have, we tried to get a grant to them, we didn't get.
Yeah, I heard a lot about that back and forth. That's a whole nother.
Yeah, that's when King Carter was.
Yeah.
We're gonna submit it again, not in September, but whenever the next round is.
Yeah. Well, I will say you guys are definitely on our list. Because it's like, when we find out, because we have our BUILD ERG, that's our African American Employers Service. So when we hear certain things like that like if your grant didn't get approved, then we will try to host our events there and give a bunch of money that way.
Well, I'll reach out to you then. You got a card on you? Or just call me one
No,
day.
I don't have anything on me, but I will. I'll let you know.
That's good to know.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
What's your name?
I'm ready. He's
Take it with you.
They didn't even fill out. You know what I call that? I call that taking the fucking piss. Asking questions. What is it? You prove the case against me. Because then